When did you realize that you were special?
God is good.
He's got him up, and he's going to take him through. McFadden scores 2. Unreal. 3 seconds to go, and David McFadden is going to win this one.
You don't need to be 100% to win. You know, sometimes you have to find a way. I try to be the best role model I can be. That stuff's more important to me than wrestling.
I just kind of fell in love with wrestling and just like that grind of, man, I get to go try and take another human's head off.
Okay, welcome back, everybody, to the On the Rocks podcast. I'm your host, Johnny. I'm joined today by 2 spectacular wrestlers. Mike Monica, welcome to the podcast. First time ever. He's been begging to be on this podcast for several months. So I had him co-host with us, and I'll introduce our actual guest in a second. But Mike, explain a little bit about your wrestling career. I know you had about 180 wins at Blair, the best wrestling high school in the country, wrestled at Duke. When did you start wrestling and when did you stop? Give me the whole, in 2 minutes or less, your whole journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I started wrestling first grade. So the first time I ever started wrestling, my first practice, I got my ass beat. I didn't even want to go back to practice. And I told my dad that. My dad said, you know what, just try one more time because I hated losing. And actually, Sammy Callie beat my ass, a good friend of me and Dave's. Beat my ass. I went back and I fell in love with it. Didn't look back. And so wrestled at Blair Academy. Was ranked in the top 10 in the country at one point. Had some great duels there.
You were ranked what?
Top 10.
Really?
Yeah.
Savage.
I think it was 9 or something.
Hell yeah.
It was my highest. And then I continued my career at Duke. Got injured a decent bit, and that's really it. You know, I didn't have a crazy college career. I still wrestle now, but I know Dave because we wrestled in the Caldwell tournament. I think in the finals one year.
Oh, you guys wrestled each other
really young. Yeah. When he wrestled for Pascack Hills.
Damn.
And ever since then, though, whenever we knew Dave was somebody that he would never stop wrestling. He could be up by 10 or down by 10. My dad would always say, just wrestle like McFadden. Wrestle like McFadden. Till the whistle blows, just keep wrestling. And that's something that I'd love to hear from Dave too, is just his ability to just keep wrestling no matter what. He doesn't let anything get in the way, ever. Doesn't care about the scoreboard. He's just wrestling. He's there to have fun. So it's going to be interesting, this conversation.
I'm excited. I'm also excited about this head I have. I am about to pass out from a 3 milligram Zyn. I can't even see straight right now, so thank you guys for making me pack this fucking thing. I don't know where I am, but Dave McFadden, everybody, let me know if I get this right. 3-time NCAA All-American, 2-time ACC champion, 4-time NCAA qualifier. I can't even read. I swear to God, I can't read this right now. How do you guys do this? I gotta take this thing out. 2-time New Jersey High School State Champion and Fargo Junior National Finalist.
Correct.
2020 U23 National Championship. You were a qualifier, correct?
For
the U23 2020 National Championship? Or
yeah,
did you win it?
I won that one.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
You won that, bro.
And then you also just made trials last year, correct? On a broken leg.
Like 3 weeks ago or however long ago that was.
Got you. When did you realize, because you've been wrestling for a while, when did you realize that you were special?
Oh man, I don't know if special is the right word. I think growing up in North Jersey, right, this is kind of the hotbed of wrestling, right? Pennsylvania, New Jersey, right? So you kind of get humbled really quickly over here, right? Like me and Mons grew up, right? We had one of my teammates now, Joey McKenna, who was older than me. He would come in, beat my butt, right? So my dad was always taking me to places to train with the best, right? So I was never like, honestly, I probably left practices more time like, man, I stink at wrestling because I was getting my butt whooped so bad. But then I ended up persevering through all that and, you know, just trying to take these little victories of like scoring a point on Joey or scoring a point on whoever I was wrestling. And that was kind of what made me better. And, you know, then I started winning, right, against guys my own age. Right. And I'm like, all right, like, I guess I'm pretty good at this. And, you know, I kind of realized around like 6th grade that this is what I wanted to do. Right. So I was playing baseball. I was swimming. I was wrestling. My dad was a baseball player. My mom didn't like wrestling. She liked sitting in the lawn with her friends and probably drinking some beer and watching me hit little league baseballs. Right. So she wanted me to stick with baseball, but I just got kind of so bored with it. And I was smaller growing up. So the one thing about wrestling is it had weight classes. So I'm like, man, I can compete against guys my own size, my own age, like, and then there's no politics, right? Like baseball, it's like depending whose dad is the coach, right? Their son's batting third, pitching, playing shortstop. And, I was probably at this time, right, I was one of the best wrestlers in the state for my age. And I was probably just about as good at baseball. But then it just started getting so political. And if I wasn't pitching or shortstop, I was like picking flowers in the outfield. I was so bored. I'd get up to hit 3 times in a 4-hour game. I'm like, man, like I could be working out right now. So I kind of made that transition. But my dad had kept me in sports, all throughout my childhood until I was like, coming to him and being like, no, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I like. And, I would compete with the best little kids like throughout the year, but these were the guys that were training all year round. So I'd come back in September when swimming season or baseball season was over, and I'd come back and I feel like, man, I'm a step behind. And, my dad was just kind of playing the long game with me of like, I don't want to burn you out, right? Because especially in this area, it's like, some of these kids, man, it's all they know. It's all they have. Then by the time they get to college, they're shot, right? So they could have a great high school career, a great little kids career. Some guys, be the best wrestlers coming into high school and they don't even make it all 4 years because they just end up resenting the sport. Mm-hmm. It's hard. So yeah, it's crazy. But my dad did a really good job with me of just trying to, put different sports in my, I guess, horizon. And I just kind of fell in love with wrestling and just like that grind of, man, I get to go try and take another human's head off,
Did you have to force yourself to wrestle, or was your dad kind of on you about it?
No, my dad, I think my dad wrestled at Wayne Valley for like 1 year in high school, and he did to stay in shape for baseball.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. So how I got involved in wrestling is the local county tournament was held at my high school, or the high school I grew up, the town I grew up in, West Milford. So he just appreciated the sport. I remember going, it's like probably one of the earliest memories I have. I remember going and just like being like, man, this is awesome, right? The finals, they bring out the one mat, there's a spotlight. And I'm like, man, this is so cool. And it's just you and one other person. And I just love that atmosphere of being like, man, you're the man in the arena almost. And I remember that at a young age, right? And I was like, this is what I want to do. So we started, my dad just took me to the local club down the street, Wrestling Plus. And, those Sunday practices, man, there were some really good guys. And it ended up, right, the owner of Wrestling Plus ended up becoming my high school coach, Keith Carson, at DePaul. So it just kind of came full circle in that. And it was awesome. I fell in love with it. I loved it. I loved learning, and, you can never be good enough, right? So it's this constant learning of technique and just being in there and trying to like fight someone off, essentially, which I fell in love with it at an early age.
Now you wrestled at Milford for what, a year, freshman year, right?
No, I went to DePaul.
You went to DePaul freshman year.
Yeah.
But you were supposed to, okay, because I remember I went to Wayne Valley. So
Yep.
You were the talk of the town back in the day. And I remember you being a smaller weight class guy, like a 125 pounder.
Yeah, my freshman year I wrestled 113.
Yeah, okay, 113. And I recall, like, now you go to DePaul and we hear about this guy that's huge, and they wrestle at 145, but you're like 5'11", 6 foot, and we're all like, what kind of steroids is he on? Like, what do we have to take to be that tall? Because we weren't that tall. What was the difference? I mean, I guess you don't really know because you didn't go to a public school. What do you think the difference is between a school like DePaul and like a regular public school program?
Yeah, I went to DePaul. So one thing my dad, right, is like, when I was coming up in 8th grade, right, it was like, I wanted to go to Blair, right, because they were #1 in the country where Mons went, but Blair doesn't compete in the New Jersey state tournament.
Yeah, what's up with that? Can you explain that?
He could probably explain it
Mons,
better.
please.
I really don't think they follow the rules. There was actually
no, they don't. They definitely don't follow the rules. NJSIAA.
Yeah. They don't follow those rules. I think at one point Blair did wrestle in the States, but that was maybe 30 years ago. And then at some point they weren't competing in the States anymore. But I remember my senior or junior year, maybe my sophomore year, when I was wrestling behind Mark Gray. He was #1 in the country. He was #1 recruit out of high school. Yeah. I was his weight, so I would go see the state championships at Atlantic City, and I'd be like, man, I know all these guys I used to wrestle with. Look at the crowd. Like, I might transfer out. And I was actually going to transfer out and go to Bergen Catholic just to feel the States and wrestle at the States.
Right.
And then I ended up starting at Blair, and that was a different story. But from my understanding, they don't follow the same rules. I don't know beyond.
So
that.
where do they go? Like, what happens when you're?
We go to prep nationals. We go all over the country. We wrestle at the toughest tournaments in the country. Ironman, Beast of the East. DePaul will be there, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other New Jersey teams. But we have
I think Wayne Valley goes there now too.
Wayne Valley
Where?
might go there now.
Beast of the East.
We went freshman year and got our dicks kicked in. We went in, dude. We were there, and I remember our good, Anthony Lamberg.
Yeah, big
It was
ass.
and is. He could hop on the mat right now and beat ass. But he was like one of our best wrestlers junior year, I believe. We're all getting smashed up. I think he gets beat pretty badly, and he's like, "Fuck this, I'm out of here." He was one of those kids, you know what I mean? He's like, "I'm done." And once he was out, we're all like, "This is over." And I think it was more of like a shock. We weren't ready for that type of wrestling because, like you said, we weren't wrestling year round like you guys were. You know what I mean? We were just fresh off a football season. We're barely in shape right now because BCS is what, like
December.
December.
Johnny Sebastian dealt with that too, who was the number one overall recruit, and I think he would win Beast, but he was so much
Was he a
better
2 or
than
3 time state champ?
Three,
right?
But he was a star football player at Berlin Catholic too. So he would come to the Beast, and you just expect this dude to roll through because he's number one pound for pound, and he would be in some really tight matches because he'd only practice for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because it's like football ends in end of November. Beast is
Maybe, yeah. If you make
right.
it,
If you make if you're on Bergen Catholic,
If
you're
you're-
playing in
yeah.
the state finals most likely, and then you have 3 weeks essentially to train for 5
is
matches
crazy.
against the best wrestlers in the country.
It's crazy to get that timing down and be at that level so quickly with that turnaround. If you're not practicing and you're just focused on football and then jumping into wrestling, maybe you'll feel good because your body is fresh. If you're off of practice for a while, but then your timing's off, you'll start getting beat. So to pull it all together is a lot.
Did you feel like you missed out on states? Like, why? I don't understand. Why would you not? Were you guys just too good?
A lot of people think that. I mean, I think we are good. I mean, we've been number 1 in the country for 33 years. I think this is the first time maybe they're number 2 officially. They lost to Wyoming Sem,
which they're unbelievable too.
but they're number 1, across the board.
They're top 2 every year, pretty much.
Top 2 every year. And every year I was there, we were number 1. I wouldn't say that. I think that they didn't really care to follow the NJ rules.
Yeah.
And so they're fine with being on the national schedule and getting the best competition that they could possibly get. Okay. We had Ironman in the beginning of December to kick off the year, which is the toughest tournament, arguably, depending on the weight in the country. And then we had Beast following that maybe a week or 2 later. Mm-hmm. And that would kind of kick off our season. And then
that's
we'd
your
go into
season opener.
Yeah,
it's
that's
ridiculous.
the season opener.
That's what people peak for at the end of the year. And this is what they would start
They're
with.
doing for your intro.
And then we'd have consistent tournaments and real crazy duels. Like our biggest rivals were either Sem, St. Ed's at one point, and then also St. Paris Graham with Jim Jordan, which is always a battle. That would happen in like February, and then we'd have national preps. Maybe late February, early March, and that would be our year.
Do you regret not going to a Blair?
No, I don't. So the reason that also is like Blair, right? They're a preparatory school, so you have the option to live there. So like, right, you could be from Florida and live at Blair. So that's, I think, why kind of New Jersey said like, no, like, cause they're getting the number, like people go there, right? You're essentially paying for college, right? You go to Blair, you could probably, you do well in school at Blair, you're getting into pretty much whatever school you want, right?
Understood,
in terms of academically and also sports. No, I don't regret it because I would train at Blair. Like that's why one of the reasons I went to DePaul is, Blair's an hour from where I live. So my dad twice a week, my coach would let me go up to Blair. So I was training with him, Jordan Cutler, Joey McKenna. So I was still getting my work in. And then, Buxton, who was the head coach, who was his head coach, who was my coach since I've been in, 7th, 8th grade, he just kind of opened the doors for me and was like, hey, whenever you want to come, you can come. And he kind of jump started when I started jumping levels working with him. So my dad would take me out of school, like right at the bell, 2:30. Blair had practice at 3:30. Like every Tuesday, Thursday, he'd drive me up there and, I get to wrestle with Mons or Cutler, or McKenna, Mark, all these studs.
He was part of the team. We always considered David.
I actually I wrestled for Blair in a summer tournament because
How's
I was
that
like
even
an
work?
honorary.
Buxton loved you. I mean, Buxton doesn't, just allow anybody into the room. He knew Dave was super serious in anything that he did. He knew he wanted to be the best.
Got you. So how did your DePaul team feel about this?
When I went to DePaul my freshman year, I think we won 2 dual meets. Yeah,
I don't remember. I do remember you guys
we
weren't
stunk
great, yeah.
when I was freshman. But my dad, so kind of backtracking, right? It's like, why'd I go to DePaul? So like my dad kind of taught me loyalty at a young age. I was being recruited by, I don't know, Bergen, Bosco, you name it. And, you know, my dad was like, look, he's like, I've known Keith my whole life, right? He was the first guy I started with the club. He's like, this is where you're going to wrestle at. He's like, I don't care. He's like, we'll do extra workouts. Like, cause when I went there my freshman year, I really didn't have workout partners, but I knew I didn't want to go to West Milford. The town I live in, you know, it's not a great school, just not great people. Like I tell people I'm from Wayne. That's why, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Wayne. And I actually tried to get my parents to move to Wayne coming up because I wanted to go to public school. I wanted to go to Valley or Hills. I think,
Man, I wouldn't have had a spot. So
Yeah.
thankfully you didn't
Where'd
go.
you go again?
Wayne Valley.
All right.
Yeah, so you guys were good. Like you guys had a really good team.
Yeah.
And you guys had some really good guys. You didn't have like, you know, the star that was like, you know, but I was like, I wrestled with, you remember the Turekis and
Oh,
stuff?
yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up wrestling, you know, with them. They would come down the plus too. So I was like, man, like they just seem like they have a really good team, good people there. Like my dad went to Wayne Valley, so I kind of wanted to go there. And he's like, let's just go to DePaul. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. And they stunk. So we would go, you know, the Blair twice a week, you know, I do private lessons here and there. So I kind of made do with what I had. And then by my senior year, right, we had a few people come in, like kid named Matt Noble and Dino, right, who's one of my best friends. And then I shouldn't say I was the only kid. We had Nick DePalma and Will Key, both
Dude,
Wayne
Nick
guys.
they were both. Yeah, we lost a lot of people to you guys.
Yes, but Nick was so much bigger than me, and Will, he was a tiny. He probably weighed 100 pounds wrestling 106, and I was a big 113 pounder. So we kind of like jump started this program. It was like, you know, my dad's like, hey, you know, are you guys gonna go to DePaul? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right. So we started out, right? So we had 3 pretty good wrestlers, or really good wrestlers, I should say, on our team, and then, you know, we probably won 2 dual meets. We didn't really have a full team, but by my senior year, we ranked 2nd in the state. You know, so we had kind of built this together, like between me, DePalma, and Will Key. And, you know, I loved it. And, you know, Coach Keith, you know, he's still, I mean, I talk to him all the time. Like he's still a really good friend of my friend now, right? I still call him coach, but, you know, we just kind of built this relationship and we made do with what we had. And then what really kind of, when I really started jumping levels in high school is when Coach Buxton left Blair and opened up a club like 30 minutes down the road in Sparta, right by my house.
Okay.
So I was with Buxton probably 4 or 5 nights a week. And so
After
I'm
practice.
Yeah. So now the Blair kids, they do their practice and then they come over to Buxton. So I'm rolling with Mons, I'm rolling with Joey, Dylan Malonis, you know, Jordan Cutler, all these guys. I'm wrestling with them now. I was going to Blair twice a week. Now I'm wrestling with them 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden then I just kind of started taking off.
This just shows like the real importance of, to get to that next level, how much you guys are willing to do versus, like we said, a regular public school program. And I think differently than other sports, the wrestling room matters so much more. Like being on a really good football team, yeah, if I played for Bergen Catholic, would I have gotten better as a football player? Maybe. Would I have been now D1? Probably not. But if I was in a really, really good wrestling room and following that program, you can get a lot better. So what you guys did to your overall room was probably pretty special. What did you instill into like the average DePaul wrestler that maybe they didn't have your freshman year?
Yeah, I think we just, you know, and Coach Keith kind of by my junior year, right, he kind of gave me a lot of like leeway to almost like kind of take the team, you know, like be the team captain or like kind of almost, it was like, you know, I'm going to Buxton's 5 nights a week. Hey, what are you working on? What do you want to show? Like, how are we going to run it? You know, this room. So we were almost like working together, right? But definitely I mean, I was young at the time, right? So like obviously some kids on the team were like, well, you know, kind of like, who like stop, you know, you're not that much better than us and that. And, you know, I was young. So it's like, I'm probably like, well, you know, I'm doing this, that, you know, so it was kind of like that. But, you know, I think we just tried, right? When you put yourself in a really good room, like you either sink or you swim. And this is what I tell people, like, you know, about college wrestling rooms. Like, if you sink, like you're going to hate your life. Like you have to figure out a way to like find a way to like get better. And that's a lot of surrounding yourself with really good people. And that's what we did at club. And eventually DePaul turned into that. I think when I graduated, we had a state champ every year for like 5 or 6 years straight. So like our legacy kind of like lasted until my coach left. He's now a coach at Pingree, at the Pingree school, I think it's called. And now DePaul stinks. We stink, which is sad.
It is
but,
sad. I think Wayne
But
stinks
we
too.
were good, and like we just like people, right? People wanted to be around us. They wanted to be around DePalma, Will Key, me, and then like so then Matt Noble transfers in, Dino transfers in, and then all of a sudden you got a team. You got 5 or 6 guys. We had Spencer Carey and Nick Carey. Like
those
we
guys
had
were savages too.
By my senior year, right? Listen to this. So we won, I think, 2 dual meets freshman year. I think me, Will, and Nick qualified for states. That was it. By our senior year, we had 7 or 8 state medalists. So we had finished second in the state behind Bergen Catholic. They were the only team that finished higher. So we took this team, and I shouldn't say we, Coach Keith, and us. We took this team that really stunk, and we didn't even have a wrestling room. Like people nowadays, the world's so crazy. Like kids, they want the nicest this. We rolled out mats on our cafeteria floor.
I remember that.
One mat, slimy, gross. We would put an ice bag on the heater to make the heat really, really start cranking. And we just, we made do with what we had. We rolled out mats, not even good mats. I think they were like 30 years old, and we just scrapped and we just wrestled and we got better and we tried to kill each other.
I remember hearing that. I'm like, what do you mean they don't have a room? They're like, yeah, they just roll it out in like the cafeteria. I was like, and they're that good? Did your training change? Like the actual, like let's say you had an hour and a half, 2 hours after school. From freshman to senior year, were you guys doing anything different? Were you working harder conditioning wise, or was it just the overall room was that much tougher?
I think I think the room was definitely better, which helps. Like my freshman year, right, you'd have maybe 5 out of 20 kids on the team that actually wanted to be there, right? And that actually wanted to kind of push each other. But then when you get 10, 15 guys, right, that are like, their goal is to be state champs, right? Just like anything, like you're going to your program's going to start rising, right? And then everyone just starts getting in sync. We're wrestling Berg and Bosco. We want to go beat those guys. Now that was never going to happen our freshman year, but by our junior, senior year, it's like, we have a chance to beat these guys. Yeah. And we want to do it. So it was just, we all just came together. We were all working together. And it was really cool to see at a young age, right? I was 14 as a freshman, graduating at 17, to just kind of see like kind of what we built. And it was cool. It's cool now, like looking back on it and just, it's like we stunk and, nothing really changed in those 4 years. We still rolled the mats out. We still had to clean the mats after. Yeah. It was like maybe as seniors, I was bossing people around. Nah, I'm not rolling up this freaking mat. Now you guys are gonna roll. I served my 3 years here.
I think a big part too, to your point before, is the room, the Blair room that made it so good, and even with DePaul when you were there, is the people that you're surrounded with. The wrestlers were great. I think anybody could really be great if you put your mind to it. But I think everybody at Blair, and I'm sure DePaul for you, they had your back. It was a brotherhood. Yeah. And because of that, you knew going in, like, this guy is not trying to hurt me to take my spot or anything. We're all just trying to get better. Yeah. And the better guy will win for wrestle-offs, whatever the case may be. But I know that everybody had my back, and I think that has a big deal to do with why Blair was so successful at all.
Right. Well, so you both trusted in, I guess, like your higher ups, like your coaches, and that's a big one too, right? Because, and I'm not saying anything, I love my high school wrestling coach, but like what you learn in the room, you only realize after, like, wait, maybe that technique wasn't right, and I learned it all wrong. So I started wrestling freshman year, and what I learned, what I thought was right, and now I'm going into college or I'm wrestling post and like jiu-jitsu, and people are telling me like, you shouldn't be doing this, do this instead. And we deal with that a lot. You're like, what did you fucking learn that you didn't know how to do this? And it's like little simple things like that so long as you have that trust like that, okay, I know this is my path. I just got to now wrestle as hard as I can against these other guys. You don't got to think about anything else. And that's the biggest problem I see in public schools is like the shakiness of these parents also, like, oh, I don't trust in this program. I got to bring my son to a club, and now they're teaching me different shit at a club. Yep. They don't trust the coaches. There's all this animosity. So that's why I was curious about how you were able to go to Blair, come back to DePaul, and still have that trust with your coach.
So that's a great point, right? Just like, because my coach, Coach Keith, is as nice and humble as a guy as you can get. But he also knew that Coach Buxton is the best coach in the entire world, essentially, one of them. Coach Buxton is a guru of wrestling.
He's awesome.
Right? He's got technique. Like, this guy watches film like he'll watch film when he's driving. Like he's a nut. He's that savvy about wrestling. So we all like he knew like, okay, the work you're getting is from like Blair is the number one team in the entire country. It's like you're around the best wrestlers, and it's like so it was just that balance of trust. It's not like I'm going to some random club with some crazy person. I mean, Buxton is crazy. He's crazy about wrestling, but it was this trust and like, hey, like, I want to show you this, coach, and this is what we worked on yesterday. And then, Coach Keith in his own right is a phenomenal coach too, right? So we had a great relationship, and me kind of going to DePaul and then having Nick come and Will come, we kind of jump started this where, people wanted to come to, no one wanted to go to DePaul before we came. No one. Yeah. No one. It was like, oh, DePaul, it's got like one hallway down. You've seen DePaul. It's not that nice of a school,
It's funny because
right?
it's not that nice and it's a private school. You would think it'd be like the nicer, the higher end people, and it's just the opposite.
Yeah, it's like, look, it was like we made do with what we had. We didn't have a room. It was like, screw it. Like, we're just going to get a bunch of good guys, and, we have to roll out mats. Who cares, right? Yeah. It's like we want to be together, and we want to start. We want to do something different. It's like I could have went to Bergen. I could have went to Bosco, Joe's, Blair, I guess. But I was like, I want to, if I can still go to Blair and train with these guys and we can make this work, like this is where I want to be. I want to do something different. Yeah. And start something and kind of lead.
Right. And it's interesting because same thing happened to, I can only speak about your football team. Like your football team was okay freshman year. By your senior year, and then I think I was a year out, they were savages. Like my buddy Nico played on that team, so I can name all those guys. But
we had
they
like
were beasts.
15 guys go Division I. Yeah. It was crazy. Like, and I remember, and that was cool for us too, because I'm a huge football fan. Like, so we go to the tailgates, go to the games, and like all of a sudden, like we just started. And Coach Mack was awesome. Like he was a great football coach. I think De Palma's dad was coaching there.
De Palma's dad was one of the best.
He was like a guru, right?
Yeah,
and now I think they have who's the guy there? Campanile, one of the brothers.
Campanile, I think, it's still there.
So like that's just a huge football name, and so it was cool, right? Like we were kind of like, I guess DePaul's like we were in this like I don't know, mecca of sports at the time. Like our softball team was good, lacrosse was good, soccer, like we were doing pretty well. So it was cool just to be a part of like, man, this random school essentially. It's like now all of our teams are kind of thriving, and
right.
It was cool.
That kind of reminds me of like the whole Rutgers thing when Astronaut started to go to Rutgers, and then they brought and recruited a bunch of great guys, and he was like the foundation of creating Rutgers wrestling team.
Dude, Astronaut, it's funny. So Astronaut was coaching at Culture for a little bit over here. Like it'd be like a 10:30 a.m. class and 5 guys would show up maybe. And obviously I know who he is, and so like I introduced myself. These other guys in the room are like younger guys, like they don't really train that much, and they're like, oh, like what's your name? Hi, I'm like, do you know who he is? And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah, he was like a pretty decent wrestler in high school. And they're like, oh, really? I was like, yeah, he didn't lose.
Yeah,
ever. I was like, he didn't lose ever. Actually, did not lose one match ever. Like I think he's the first person
ever to go on.
Was it 149-0 or something like that?
And then Suriano ended up going to Rutgers through transfer. Yeah, ended up transferring in. They were the two undefeated 4-time state champs. But like to Monza's point, right? Like Astronaut was the number 1 overall recruit. Like Rutgers, like they needed him at that point, and he could have went to Penn State, Oklahoma State, any program, and he kind of took that leap of faith on them and like really like put them on the map. Now Rutgers is an extremely desirable school to go to.
I thought they were always deep. You're saying like from Astronaut on, they've been
to jump to that extra
level,
to go from like
a different level than they were.
Interesting.
100%. And I guess the room was better. The guys were better.
Okay.
They had more of a brotherhood, I would say. From past wrestling teams that they had.
And he was sort of the start of that.
Yeah. And then it just kept funneling in. And because of that, everybody wanted to start going to Rutgers now. You have people that, I think one of the Moore brothers, right?
Yeah, Mitch Moore, who I wrestled with at Virginia Tech, ended up transferring in. And
now you got people out of state, wanting to go to Rutgers. A lot of it was like funneling from New Jersey. Best guys wanted to go to Rutgers. Right. They wanted to stay home. Now you got guys coming from all over the place wanting to be at Rutgers and knowing and understanding that, that they have a great team.
Yeah.
And they have a great room.
It is a culture, and I think again when you're a younger kid, you don't really know what hard work is until you're in a room with guys like you, and you're like, wow, I thought I was working hard. And the body is very like, adaptive. You can work a lot harder than you think you can. You just got to be around the right people, and you guys probably experience that and then instill that in the younger generation or whatever is happening on, in DePaul. You knew it because you walked into a program like that, but I think it's a little bit different for you. You, junior, senior year, now you grew, right? You're a bigger guy, but you're wrestling at 145. What did you walk around at?
So I went 113 to 126, hit a growth spurt midway through the season at 126. So I got up to like
Mid-season?
Mid-season. Right after the Beast of the East. I take third. I beat the defending state champ. So I checked my weight after New Year's. And so this is why I went up 20 pounds the next year. So I checked my weight after New Year's and scale says like 138, 140. Like, there's no way. Like, I wasn't cut. Like, I cut so much weight for 13. It hit a little bit of a growth spurt, but like, I also didn't know how to cut weight, right? So I'm just like running in plastics, like all this stuff, right? So the next year, I'm like, I'm not going to cut that much weight. So I was like walking around mid-season, like probably like 130, 132. So I'm like, oh, 26 sounds perfect. January comes along. After the Beast of the East, I take third in it, which is, one of the nation's premier tournament, right? So I'm like, I'm winning state title. I took second in the states my freshman year. I'm like, I'm gonna win a state title this year. Check my weight after New Year's. I'm like 140. I'm like, there's no way. So I literally throw my scale out and I make my dad drive me to Walmart to get a new scale. I'm like, scale's broken. So I'm like, this.
He's probably like, okay.
And you know how, like, right? You
like,
wrestle,
sure, buddy.
right? It's like, when you check your weight and the number isn't what you want to see, you're like, I'm going to break something. Yeah. Like, so I throw the scale. I'm like, Dad, this scale, we've had it for 2 years, is broken. It's a little cheap scale. So go to Walmart, get the scale, 140. I'm like, oh my God, I'm hurting. So it's January. I can't go up to 132 now because of the way the rules are. Or maybe
more than 2 weight
or it's like you have to like commit by certify or go by a certain date. So I wanted to go up to 132 because I was struggling hard to make weight. I was like, my body was just not agreeing with me. But also one of my friends was up at 132 and he was willing to go down to 126 if I had told him earlier. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this. So I suffered a lot that year. So the next year I'm like, screw it. I'm wrestling my natural weight. So I was 145. I probably weighed maybe 150. I didn't really cut weight.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then Buxton opened up his club my junior year of high school. So I was actually able to train more, right? Because I'm like, my body feels good. Like, I don't need to worry about my weight. So I started wrestling like twice a day, every day. Right. Shit. And then I won my first state title. And then the next year I was walking around 160. I wrestled 160, but at that point in the state, like, there was no one at 152, 170, 160 that could really touch me. It was just, not to like be cocky, but it was just like, I was I was so much better than everyone in New Jersey, like in the state tournament, that I'm like, I could go 152, it'd probably suit me better, but like, I walk around 160, I'm just going to wrestle 160. And then right now I'm looking at colleges and stuff. And I'm like, I'm probably going to be a 165 pounder. Like, I'm not going to cut weight. Like, I'm going to get bigger for college. Sure. Like, not to like overlook the state tournament, but I won the state tournament. I'm like looking at the guys at 160. I'm like, there's no one really in this bracket. Like, unless I slip on a banana peel, that's probably going to give me, a challenge. So I was almost like looking ahead, like, okay, how am I going to set myself up for college now? Okay. And so I just wrestled my normal weight and it was great. I got to eat for the first time ever. And just like, I remember before my state finals, like, I had a big plate of chicken parm and pasta. I was like 3 pounds underweight, and it was
imagine watching this dude eat chicken parm right before your match.
Are you kidding me? It was the greatest feeling in the world. I was savoring it so much. I'm like, this will probably never happen again in my life.
So he's like snapping his head on. He's like, "You're up next." Like,
what weight were you for? Who's number one? What weight was that against Isaiah White?
That was 152, but it was a night before weigh-in.
Oh my god! So you walked on the mat, what, 160?
I was probably 165. Yeah, I was big. And it was funny because the Who's Number One card is like, they take the number one wrestler in the country versus the number two wrestler in the country at every weight. So I was on card. That card was insane. It was like, I had myself, Mark Hall, Zahid Valencia, like you name Miles Martin. Like, there were so many national champs from that, Who's Number One card specifically. But I remember when they called me and they asked me, and I was ranked number 2 in the country at 152. I already known I was going 160 this year. And so they're calling me. They're like, are you going 160 or 152? Like, if you're going 160 this year, you're going to be ranked whatever, third or fourth. And I'm like, no, yeah, I'm definitely going 152 this year because I wanted to wrestle. So I had the number one ranking in the country for like a week. I didn't really care, but I ended up winning that card, but I wanted to wrestle in it because it was a huge showcase, right? Like I live for those type of moments that I'm like, yeah, no, I'm going 152. They're calling me. They're like, are you sure? Like we heard rumors. I'm I'm good.
I remember the practice. I was wrestling with you. We were doing like practice matches and with Jared Platt when he was in the room with Buxton. And I remember, we were wrestling a match and I don't know what it was, but Buxton was screaming at you like, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna win if you wrestle like this. And I'm thinking in my head like, I don't know, McFadden just turns it on, when the lights shine. I remember I was, beating you in the practice that we were wrestling a match and Jared got pissed. And I knew in my head though, like, just wait till tomorrow. I've known McFadden since I was a little kid. And sure enough, I went to that card at Lehigh when they had that match and he got the number one ranking. He won that match, a few days later. So I guess I always want to understand, like, what's the mindset? How are you able to turn it on when the lights shine, when the pressure is at its highest? You've always been able to do it. You still do it to this day.
Yeah, it's funny. So even the college guys and guys, like I'll lose practice matches all the time because I'll try things. Right.
Got it.
I'll try things. And also the way my training now is implemented, I'm not supposed to feel good, going into a Friday match day until it's competition time. So I'll put 8 workouts in, right? And then have to go wrestle, Friday match day, we call it. And so my body's hurting by Friday. I'm not feeling as good. I'm a little more run down as opposed to kind of tapering off a week or two before. And I've kind of I wrestle better when the lights are on for whatever reason. I feel like some guys are great practice room wrestlers. And when they step out and there's 20,000 people or 2,000 people and it's you versus another opponent in one match, they lock up. I've always felt more free in those moments of like, man, I've trained so hard for this moment right here in front of all these people. Like I want to put on a show. I don't want to wrestle a boring style. I want to go out there and I want to just kind of let it fly, right? And just open up and just literally put on a show, right? Because wrestling is not a mainstream sport, right? Like UFC has taken off so much because people want to see people get punched in the face.
Exactly.
No one really wants to see us like wrestle a 1-1 match or a 2-1 match and have it tight, right? It's like, so I try and do my best to just go out there and just freaking let it rip, essentially,
It is funny because you mentioned the same thing is like the same thing you're mentioning about, I train really hard and this is my moment just to let it fly. The opposite kicks in for some people too is like, oh my God, I train this hard. I can't lose. And what if I slip up or what if I forget what I was doing in the room and this and that, and they psych themselves out. And being able to be a good competitor is like the most important thing. Cause I feel like nowadays a lot of kids get really psyched out, especially in high school. You look at high school wrestlers and in the room, maybe everybody's relatively the same potentially, but the guys that are at the top, like yourself, just believe beginning of the season, I'm going to be a state champion.
Yeah.
And that mindset is so rare for kids at fucking 14 years old.
I think a big part of it too is, back to Dave's point is he kind of told his dad, like, this is what I want to do. He kind of took initiative with action. Like, this is what I want to do. Nobody else is doing it for me. Nobody's telling me to do this. You wanted to do that. You took the first step and then you continued that. And I think that's a big part of, are you in your head or not? You remember right before the match, I'm sure, nobody asked me to be here. Like I did this willingly and I'm going to have fun with it.
It's funny because you asked me, right? Like, why did I end up going to DePaul over Blair? And one of the reasons is because I wanted to wrestle in the New Jersey State tournament, right? So I'd grown up going to Atlantic City. My dad would take me down there since I've been 8 years old, right? And so Blair, right? National preps, there's probably 500 people there, right? Yeah. There's not a lot, but Atlantic City is a show, right? You make the finals, it's one mat, there's a light show, there's 10,000, 15,000 people. I remember the first time sitting in Atlantic City watching like Jordan Burroughs, Frank Molinaro, all these guys, they win, they're running around the mat, they're running up into the stands. I'm like, man, this is what I want to do, right? And Blair, you didn't have that opportunity, but it really helped me when I got to college because I remember you talking about nerves now and stuff. The most nervous I've ever been in my entire career, and I hate to discredit the person that beat me in the state finals my freshman year, but I remember like I froze up so bad. So I ran through the tournament. I was a freshman, wasn't supposed to win. I had beaten the guy that took 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th on my way to the state finals, right? Just wrestling out of my mind. I'm like, man, I got this. Like in the finals, I remember walking out, they do the lineups. You go, you shake your opponent's hand, right? One mat, they call your name. I'm second match up. And I remember like I'm 14 years old and I'm wrestling the defending state champ too. But I had a much better tournament than he was kind of up, down all year. And I was pretty consistent of like, man, like I'm this freshman that's on this tear. I remember walking out to the mat and I vividly remember like kids ask me all the time in clinics, right? Like, or camps, this question, like, do you ever get nervous? And it's like, no, yes, I get nervous. I get anxiety still. I get butterflies, but I know how to control it now. Because my freshman year, I'm 14, I'm walking out to the mat. And I remember like, I literally couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my body. I felt like I was going to throw up, right? There's 10,000, 15,000 people screaming. And I go out to the mat and I felt like I couldn't move because I was so nervous and so anxious. And I literally like felt like I couldn't like take a step because it was the first time I was ever in front of 15,000 people screaming. And then, right, we're getting in like all these scrambles and stuff and the crowd's going. And I end up losing that match. And that essentially helped me my junior year winning my first state title. I wrestled one of Monza's friends, Burker, who we grew up wrestling together. And I had beaten Burker that year, like pretty handedly. And so I have this plan in my head of what's going to happen. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to take him down, get on top, right? I get taken down within 5 seconds off the whistle. I get ridden out the entire first period. Now I'm losing. And this dude is kind of having that tournament. He was like the ace seed. He's just bulldozing his way through the top. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I start freezing up again. And I remember having this conversation in my head, like, you're not letting this happen again. You're not letting this happen again. And I ended up making a mid-match adjustment.
What was it? Wasn't it like 7-6? I remember watching this match. It was live. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Two of my friends, and I knew McFadden and I know his capabilities too. And it was a razor close match, but you're in front of so many people. Yeah. You got to pull it all together for that one match.
It's the one match. It's one of a few matches that I can't go back and rewatch because it gives me that much anxiety watching. Because there was this scramble at the end where, looking back at it now, like I still remember the flurry in my head. Like I'm like, I don't want to say I got lucky, but the ref had a 50-50 call to make and he put it in my favor, like a last second takedown with like 2 or 3 seconds left. So it's like if they gave him that takedown, he wins the match. They end up saying no takedown. And it's one of the one matches I can't watch because there's so many scrambles. The crowd is crazy and it just gives me so much anxiety to watch.
It's so funny.
And I know I won. Like I won.
It was like 7-6. I remember this like it was yesterday.
Crazy.
I remember watching it from the stands. And didn't you have that white halo headgear with the chin strap? I remember
headgear.
like literally it was yesterday. I was nervous. I was sweating. I was turning around. I didn't even know what to do. I couldn't even imagine him in that match.
Oh.
It's razor close.
I'm like sweating thinking about it right
now. It is funny. Moments like that, and wrestling or not, you almost feel like it wasn't supposed to happen. So if you keep rewatching it, somehow God's going to change the past and it's going to go the other way. So you're like, all right, for whatever reason, thank God that I won. Let me move on and never think about it again.
Yep, exactly. Like I literally, I can't watch that match. And there's probably one other one I can't watch that I can't think of off the top of my head. But I think I rewatched it one time and then I'm like, yep, it wasn't two. And then I never watched it again. There was just so much anxiety.
Well, I'm sure things haven't gone in your favor sometimes in the past. So this is the one time where God's like, all right.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take this and walk away from it. Like I'm a state champ. It is what it is. Like, so it was a crazy match. But it's one thing that prepared me for college because the only other time I wrestled in front of more people was the NCAA tournament, right? So going into that, like I think it gave me an advantage. Like Blair, right there. I mean, you're in the college room, right, for 4 years. You're in a college room for 4 years before you even step foot in college, which is why a lot of Blair guys in our era, I'll say, like by the time they got to college, a lot of them didn't have the careers they want because they had just done 4 years of college wrestling. So you're wrestling the best wrestlers, you're traveling, you're doing all these tournaments. By the time you get to college, you're like, man, I have 4 more years of this, 5 more years. Now I'm even a little better room, right? So all these guys, right? Like Mons talked about his injuries, right? It's like, you're going to get hurt in college. Like you're going to be hurt. If you wrestle for 4 years, 100-something matches, whatever, like there's a 0% chance you're going to walk out of there without an injury, right? So like, I felt like the Blair team, now Blair, these kids go to Blair, they go into college. I don't know if they're training different now or they're taking a little step back or whatever. They're going to college, they're freaking killing it. But our era, right, it wasn't like that.
To your point, exactly, and you hit it on the head, is, you know, when I was in college, I was never, first off, I had 180 matches in high school. I was never really
That's
hurt.
A lot.
I never really cut that much weight. I wasn't a big weight cutter. I was also 145 my senior year. I was probably cutting from 150, and that's me eating all the time. And I was never hurt. And once I got to college, you know, you're now balancing double sessions, you're balancing schoolwork, you have no other time to do anything else, you're away from home. And so that's where you really become a man. Mm-hmm. And when I started wrestling, you know, the coaches didn't really care about what worked for you, it was what worked for the whole team. And for me, you know, it didn't work out so well because, you know, I broke both ankles. I remember at one time I had 2 broken ankles at one time. I broke the first ankle against.
Are you wheelchaired?
No, I wasn't. So I was actually walking around campus,
like a fucking...
no crutches, nothing. I was just inching like a fucking penguin. So it would take I would be late to every class because I'd have to go from one campus to the fucking next, the other side of it, and I hated my life. And just to rewind, I wrestled in the Scuffle, and second match against Anthony Colica. Right off the bat, I just break my ankle. I break my ankle.
He broke his third ankle.
And now we broke all 3 of these fucking things.
My first ankle, just rewinding. And then I was like, fuck, I was in extreme pain. That was over the weekend. On a Monday, I'm wrapped up and I'm wrestling live, 7:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I break my other ankle. As I come up, I'm lifting up somebody and I'm compensating, so I'm leaning on my left side.
Yeah.
I just hear it snap. Ugh. So now I got 2 broken ankles. I'm still wrestling, but I'm really wrestling on my knees. I break my rib. I know, it was horrible.
You like that
and
guy
at this
from
point, I'm like, what the fuck am I even doing? Like, I'm not happy anymore. To your point, you start to resent the sport, something that I always loved. And now I love it again because I'm doing it for me. But I remember being on an Aerodyne bike with 2 broken ankles and a broken rib, and coaches, you know, screaming, yelling, hard, like, go harder. And I just got up. I said, I'm done. And, you know, it killed me inside because, you know, I'm coming up with Dave. I'm coming up with Jordan Cutler. I've wrestled with all these guys and know it was good enough to accomplish my goals, and I wasn't able to. And that's something that, you know, I'll take on with me forever. But now I look back and, you know, whatever I do now, because I think I was a wrestler too, where sometimes I'd be on when the lights were shining, but a lot of the times I was in my head. I was that national champion in the room. I was beating everybody in the room. I could go up 3 weight classes and beat you up. But it didn't really matter, right? You had to perform when it counted. And I think that's where I struggled. And that's why I really want to understand from Dave's point of view is like he was the opposite. He was not being the best in practice because his body wasn't fully, you know, healed. And then when he's out there, he trusted in his body, trusted in the preparation, and he was shining every single time he stepped on the mat. Every single time.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit about, you know, my career. And to your point is when I got to college, I couldn't handle that stress on my body, my mental state. And so, you know, I had to make a decision. And I'm not somebody that gives up. And, you know, junior year, I decided to step away. I stepped away from wrestling. And, you know, I would still wrestle on the side. I would still wrestle in the room. Coach always let me in the room. But I still had to live with, hey, you know, I could have been national champion. I could have been an All-American. That's what I always wanted to be. And I couldn't. And so, you know, going through that, now I could reflect back when I have kids one day, you know, understanding people that do go through it now, you know, what needs to change mentally to really get through that and really become the best that you're supposed to be or reach your potential in that stage. So, you know, that's a little bit about my story.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you guys came from 2 different high school programs and different like ideations, but had the overarching like one coach sort of coaching both of you. What do you think is the biggest difference between high school wrestling overall and college wrestling?
A lot. Like college wrestling it's the hardest sport in the world, right? And this is why guys go on and they do so well in MMA, right? there's nothing like going through the grind of a college season. I mean, this is like 24/7. Like you get 2 weeks off after season typically, and then maybe a couple weeks in August before you go back to school off. So you're really taking probably 4 weeks off of the whole year. And in that time, you're still like working out. You're just kind of more back home and stuff. But it's just a constant balance of school. You're doing 2 workouts at minimum every day. It's the worst thing on your body you could like the amount, had multiple surgeries, multiple torn things, all this stuff. It's just it teaches you, if you can get through it, like, right, that's why they always say like wrestlers make such good employees, right? Because no matter what we do, right, no matter what we do in life, like it's gonna be easier than what we've just done our whole life, right? Like maybe like if you're not as smart with finances, like it's gonna be difficult, but like you can do it, like you can figure it out. Unless you're like dumb and just like, I don't know that much. I'm not dumb, but I don't know like a whole, like, right. But I seek wise counsel, right? Like I have people that, the wrestling community is so small, right? It's big, but it's small. So it's tight knit. So it's like, I have a question about my finances. Like I'll call one of my buddies that, went to Wharton, right? The best finance school. And it's like, hey, I got a question about this. Okay, boom, right? So then I figure it out. I learn, right? We're wrestlers are very adaptable people. So it's like anything we do is going to be easier than waking up at 6 a.m, having to go to morning lift, then a drill after, then go to 3 classes in between. Then, oh, by the way, now we have our hard practice in the afternoon. Now, if you got to cut weight, you got to do it at 9 o'clock at night when the lights are off and no one's in there.
So, okay, walk me through like a real intense day at a D1 wrestling program.
So we'll just go, let's say Tuesday mornings, right? Like Monday, you kind of, let's say you compete Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you'll be off, right? You sauna or do whatever. And then Monday morning, right, it's 6:30, lift drill typically in the morning, right? And, you're still balancing school and stuff. 2:30, 3 o'clock practice, right? Goes till 5:30. Now you got to go to dining hall or whatever, eat. Then you got to do homework or get an assignment due. And then, right, if you're cutting a lot of weight, let's say like you got a match on Friday and it's Thursday, right? So it'll be lighter practices. You come in the morning, probably get like a little light roll in, just lose a little weight, come back at 3 o'clock, right? Do a weight cut practice. And if you got to cut more weight, you got to come back at 9 o'clock at night, right? So wrestling is the one sport, which is crazy. I had someone say this. I think he was a football player. He's like, wrestling's the one sport where like you have to feel the worst and compete at your best. Like think about football, basketball, baseball, right? Like I've seen like, a day before football practice, right? They're not even in pads or anything. They're just throwing like whatever, 10 passes I mean, you know more about football than I do, but I've seen like Virginia Tech, right? It's a typical walkthrough. They'll hand the ball off to the running back and maybe the coach will hit him with like a little pad or something to act like he's getting hit, right? So you're like, and then they're eating this big meal to gear up where
you're going in comfortable.
Yeah,
you're going uncomfortable. It's wrestling. You're always uncomfortable in wrestling. And the big thing too is like you're in a tournament, and one of the years, I think it was when we were at MSG, and you were in the NCAAs, right?
Yep. At Madison Square Garden, that was my first one.
And I remember Dave just came out of nowhere, and the thing is, you lost. Right, and you had to wrestle back, go through the blood rounds, and wrestling's the only sport also where you'll lose, and you got to get your shit together because 30 minutes later you're wrestling and everything's on the line in this one
now
day
it's
or
do
2
or
days,
die,
right? And I remember you just pulled it all together and you beat the kid from West Virginia that beat you. I don't remember his name. And then you beat
Iowa State,
right?
Yep.
That year, I remember like it was yesterday because my Dave, big McFadden fan, he's going crazy. McFadden's gonna beat him all. He's gonna wrestle all the way back, and that's what he was doing. He went through the whole tournament, and not many people can do it. Even if you're a wrestler, there's also a separation there mentally. You get to the end. There's a lot of wrestlers that are top seed that don't even place. Yeah. There's 16 seeds, 20 seeds that are making the finals, and for example, that Penn State kid, forget his name. He lost his first match. He wrestled all the way back. This was this year.
Oh, K-Sack, the 149 pounder. You wrestled like what, 7, 8 matches?
Took out the number 1 seed, 4 seed. So
Jesus,
that's a completely different level as well. So there's also levels in college wrestling as well. So it was awesome to see Dave wrestle all the way back.
Typically, right, the best wrestler wins. Not always, but right, typically. But the toughest wrestler will come back and take third, right? Because your dream of being a national champ, world champ, whatever you're at, right? You lose. Now you got to go wrestle even more matches than you had already envisioned in your head, right? And that's why at the NCAA tournament, like if a top seed goes down, typically, right, they're expected to win. And now like you have someone coming up that maybe isn't thinking they're going to win, but their goal is just to All-American. That's like, man, I have this opportunity to go take out the number 1 seed.
And it happens most of the time.
Happens
Never
a lot.
does the number 1 seed really lose maybe in the semis or quarters.
We saw this year at 149, Ridge Lovett, right? Number 1 all year, right? In the Hodge Trophy running, didn't lose. Or maybe he did lose once this year, but he was a number 1 seed, loses.
I don't think he lost.
Yeah, maybe he was undefeated, but clear cut number 1 seed, right? Loses to Virginia Tech, Caleb Henson, who's an absolute dog, by the way. And he was my pick to win. I thought he was going to win 149. Dude's a absolute dog. Going to be really good in whatever he does, but he beats Lovett, and then Lovett, he just couldn't pull it together the next day, right? Really? So you lose this. The NCAA tournament is the hardest. It's 3 days of literal misery. So you finish, if you make the semifinals. I made the semifinals my sophomore year. I lost to Vincenzo Joseph, who was a 2-time national champ at Penn State. I got done with my match around 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm 8 pounds over. 8 pounds over. So I have to throw on my, sweats and stuff, work out, get 4 or 5 pounds off, right? Now I go to bed hungry and thirsty, go in the bed at 2 or 3. If you can sleep, right? My dream of being a national champ is done. So I'm up till 3 in the morning, just staring at the ceiling. Got to wake up at 6 and lose 2 or 3 more pounds. So I have, rubbers on. I'm trying to break it. So I can't move my body at this point. Meanwhile, I just wrestled 4 or 5 matches, extremely hard. My goal of being a national champ's done. I'm trying to run, but I can't because my body physically will not run. And it is a brutal tournament. It's if you don't make the finals in that morning session, meanwhile, you have to wrestle that morning session to take 3rd through 8th place at 10 o'clock at night. So you're making weight at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then they just roll right through. So you wrestle one match, like Mon said, 30 minutes to probably an hour later, you're wrestling. And meanwhile, you're wrestling the best guys in the country. Not like you're wrestling the dude down the street.
Everyone's great.
And you can't warm, you literally, your body, you just physically can't warm up. So you're even more out of your routine because your typical warm up, you can't even do because you almost got to not warm up, save everything just to try and go one match. It's just, it is so brutal. It's the NCAA tournament and you're making weight 3 days in a row. You're finishing sessions at 8 or 9. So you're cutting this weight constantly. You're going up 6 pounds on Thursday night or 8 pounds, back down on Friday. Then if you All-American or in the finals, you're probably 8 pounds back up again, have to swing it. So you're swinging it 2 nights in a row.
Right.
No sleep. Your body doesn't even know where it is. It's insane.
Who's helping you through this? Anybody?
Coaches are staying up with you. If you bring a practice partner or something, they're with you, but you're up late. You're making your bathroom into a sauna by turning on the sink is hot, turning on the shower. It's just you're finding weight. And that's what wrestlers, you find a way, right? Yeah, it sucks, but it's it's what you know. Right? It's we've done this our whole lives. It's yeah, this sucks, but
we know it sucks.
It sucks, right? If I told a random person this, they'll be man, I could never do it. It's but you tell one of us, it's yeah, we've done it. It's just, it's hard.
It seems unbelievably hard, but it also maybe it's so dangerous to get comfortable. If you took a week off, and you're you mentioned football players on a Friday, they take it easy, they rest up, they recover. But it would almost be more dangerous for you to do that because as soon as you went back to normal, your mind would snap back and be what the fuck am I doing? I'm not doing this anymore. You're gonna the only reason you're not mentally quitting is because you hit such a rock bottom that your mind does not know what else to do. That
leads to the next thing though is tell us a little bit about when you broke your ankle, right? Yeah. And then you stepped on the mat. You've been out for so long, so there was normalcy, and you're not used to normalcy. Yeah. And then 6 weeks before you have a tournament to qualify for the trials, you step on the mat, and that's the first time in months. Yeah. What was going through your head, and even through the tournament, right before the tournament and then after, what was the feeling?
Yeah. So speaking of that too, right, is you take a week off. This is why wrestling is crazy. If you can train for 6 months. Right, you go to the NCAA tournament, you do what you do. You take a week off. By the time you and don't do anything, just eat whatever you want. You're out of shape within a week.
Yeah.
So you just put, I don't even know how many hours that adds up to of whatever it is. And you take 1 week off, your body starts locking up, right? I just went through it after trials. I took 2 weeks off the mat, like didn't really do anything, eat, kind of did what I wanted. And by the time I stepped on the mat, like I felt like my body was going to fall apart because I didn't really do anything, right? So when I broke my ankle in December, right, I break it in the semis. So the semis of our nationals, the US Open. So to qualify for the Olympic trials, you have to take top 5. So you lose in I lose in the semis. I just have to win 1 match, right, out of 2 matches the next day to qualify. But I couldn't really stand. So I tried to wrestle. I gave it my best shot. I lasted about 7 seconds until like I was just like, yeah, this is really broken. We kind of knew it was broken, but it's like I'm trying to trick my mind to be like, I'm all right. And so we get back. I literally get home. My wife was with me. We get home. We Uber straight to the x-ray place. And they're like, yep, it's broken. Met with the surgeon Tuesday. Had surgery on Friday. So this happened like boom, boom, boom. This is like 2 days before Christmas. Right? So first question is to the surgeon. I'm like, hey, what's the deal? Like, you know, and she's like, you broke your fibula in 2 places. We have to go in, probably screw it, plate it, this, that. I'm like, okay. I was like, what's the timeline? She's like, probably 3 to 6 months to get back. I'm like, okay. I'm like, is there any chance I can be back wrestling like in terms of competition in 3 months? She was like, yeah, there is. I've seen it done, but it's going to be hard. She's like, you're going to cut it close, but she's like, it's not impossible. So she gave me hope right away. I'm like, okay, cool. So get surgery Friday, took 2 days. I took Saturday, Sunday off. Monday, I was back in the gym, right? Cause I knew, I was like, if this is a team, right? Cause I just competed too. And so I've done the whole week off, 2 weeks off, right? But then like, you don't have to compete for 3 months. So like, it's like, I can get back in shape, like wrestling shape in a few weeks if, you know, I'm actively wrestling, but I know I'm not going to be able to step on a mat for probably 2 months at least. So I was back in the gym of just like, and I couldn't even sweat. So I'm like lifting. I'm just doing lifting, trying to rotate my body, just loosen myself up. And as soon as I would like start sweating, I'd have to like kind of stop because
you can't sweat because of
I had a cast and the
Okay,
stitches
gotcha.
and all that. And I'm just like, man, this is brutal. So and I'm used to sauning like almost every day, right? Sauna's great for you. And so I'm just like, I'm losing my mind right here, right? Like I'm so tired too from like the medicine too. So like I'd like trying to just keep my body in that routine. So I'm in the gym, like I'm doing whatever I can, like one-legged presses, pull-ups, this, right? I'm in contact with my coaches of like, you know, what is like a scientific approach almost to this? Like, I don't want to just go in the gym and just hit 10 sets of bench for no reason. Like, how are we going to stay as close to a routine as possible? And like, I'm on the Airdyne bike, just using my arms, right? I did that for like, talking about the Airdynes when you're hurt, you never want to jump on a bike ever again. After that, it is the worst thing.
It's the worst. I mean, it's the toughest piece of cardio that you could do. It's on that bike.
It sucks.
I have trauma from that.
And you're just losing.
If you want to get in real good shape, though, these
guys are tweaking, thinking about the bikes.
Oh my God, I hate
Airdyne bikes. Like, yeah. How long are you staying on air? Like an average hardcore session,
Sprinting,
like an hour?
You're doing the sprints on and off.
Yeah, just on. Like so,
On
I
and
would
off.
do that. I would do like low base twice or 2 days out of the week, and then I do my spikes at the end of the week. So like typically trying to like simulate what I would do in wrestling practice. So like typically Monday we come in, we hit it pretty hard. Tuesday we hit it pretty hard. Then Thursday is kind of like a little, not typically you don't wrestle live on Thursday, right? To prepare for Friday match day. So I was doing bike matches on every Friday. I was just trying to keep my heart rate up after I got out of the cast.
When you say bike match, you're saying like you're gonna go hard 3 minutes.
Yeah, like 3 minutes, 30-second break. And I do like little sprint intervals. So like maybe 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 3 minutes. That's the hardest.
That kills you.
Yeah, it's called like the toboggan or something. Some Russian dude like made it up or whatever. I don't even know if he's Russian, but it's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 3 minutes straight. I'm like, there's no way this can be that hard, bro. Like you are like, I mean, you're wheezing after just for 3 minutes. So I would do, typically you wrestle 2 matches on Friday. So I do these for 12 minutes. And like, meanwhile, I hate the bike too. I'm losing my mind on there. Like I'm trying to listen.
But you can't even pedal. You're just.
I'm on the arms. And then once I got my boot, I'm pedaling too. So now I'm even going harder. And so I did this probably from January to February. And, I'm still like I had to have this goal in mind to get back, because I've been, and I'll tell you even a crazier story after this from my freshman year, but I had surgery on my knee, and I had an idea that I was going to redshirt this year. So my rehab wasn't as serious. I'm like, I have time. Right. I have 2 years. I don't have to get back in this season. Right. I knew I needed to have a goal in mind to, really like do everything and anything possible to get back. And meanwhile, I'm just like trusting in my coaches. I'm praying about this. I'm like, I don't know if this is possible, but I have to act like it is. Yeah. Right. Like I didn't really know until like 2 or 3 weeks before that, like, all right, like it's a full go. I just said I was going, right? So I had this in mind that I'm going to be back by this date. I remember I wrote it in my journal somewhere of, I think it was like 40 something days that I wrestled my first match of live. I vividly remember this day. I lost to the 3rd string 165 pound backup at Penn. My first practice back. I couldn't shoot, but my trainer, her name's Christina. She's a Penn Medicine athletic trainer. She's like, if you're serious about this, like, I have to throw you back on the mat right now, because we're like 6 weeks away, and I'm wrestling like a dummy in the corner, like literal like dummy, like taped to the wall. Yeah. Right. And I can't really push off. She's like, look, it's not going to break. She's like, you have a metal plate in there. She's like, not going to break. She's like, and we've done the rehab like to just get enough strength back in it. She's like, so if this is your goal, like I have to pretty much throw you out there right now, because we're 6 weeks away. So 6 times 7 is what, 42, right? Yeah. So yeah, I have in my, that's great math, Mons. That's that Blair Academy education.
He's smart, bro. Mons just plays dumb sometimes.
Right, so I have it in my journal. It was about 6 weeks out, and I had wrestled 2 matches that day, and I had lost, I think, both of them, and it was to the 2nd string and 3rd string backup at Penn. Like great kids, great wrestlers, but right, like it's like,
I wonder how they felt. Do you think they almost felt like bad?
He was so happy.
Oh, he was.
I remember his name was Cole. He's awesome, dude. I think he's playing football for Penn this year too. He's like done wrestling. He's like, he has 1 year of eligibility, but he was so, because like he could never like score on me. No offense, Cole, if he ends up listening to this. He's a great kid, but he had the biggest smile on his face. The lifting coach came in. He's like, hey, I heard you lost to Cole. Like he's so happy.
Like, listen, you made his day though, man.
Oh no, that's my movement guy. So he was super helpful awesome too, because so I do like, kind of functional patterns, which really, really help my ankle, because you can only rehab to a certain point until like you have to almost like start doing athletic movements for your rehab. Because I can sit there with a band, do calf raises, all that stuff, but it's not going to translate over the wrestling. Like it's just for the time being of like, kind of almost complementing the exercise. This was like 6 weeks out, and I'm just like, I couldn't shoot. I lost. I'm like, man, there's no way I can wrestle. And then, so I remember I was sitting at coffee with Jordan Burroughs, and his story's crazy too, right? He broke his ankle like 30 days before the world championship, got surgery, and didn't wrestle. He didn't step on a mat until the day before his world championship match, because the head coach of USA Wrestling was like, They brought Kyle, like this is when him and Kyle Dake were at 74 kilos. So they brought Kyle, like Jordan had beaten Kyle, but then broke his ankle at camp. So they brought Kyle out on the trip too and told him like, you have to be ready to wrestle. Sure, like you're probably going to wrestle. And so the head coach of USA Wrestling at the time told Jordan, like, I need to see you do a practice right now. I need to watch you go live right now. And so he said that was the first time he stepped on the mat. He wrestled a live practice, went on that day and the day after, and won a world championship.
That's so crazy.
In 30 days, like just shot him up, sent him out there, and he won a world championship. So hearing that like inspired me, because I was ready. I was sitting at coffee with him, and I was ready to tell him, I'm like, man, like I can't do this. Like, like I'm at my breaking point of like, this is it. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he's just like, he told me one thing that was really important to me, which is even something like to focus on in everyday life of just, he told me, he's just like, win the day, just win one day at a time. He's like, cause I'm like, okay, now it's 40 days. Like typically wrestlers, right? We start our training phases 6 weeks out. I'm like, I'm 6 weeks out. I'm not even close to where I need to be. He's like, don't worry about that. You still got time. He's like, you got 40 days. Like, you're fine. Just start checking the box on one day. So I started putting one day after another, this, that. And all of a sudden, like my mindset just switched. Like I was like at my breaking point of like, this is unattainable. Like, we'll just bag it, but it's like, no, your goal is to get back for the Olympic trials. So it's probably about maybe 2 weeks before, 3 weeks before, where I had it was like my first like real good practice where I'm like, I'm not going to be 100%, but I can get it done. I can beat these guys. And I'm like, I've trained too hard, and I freaking was working out 2 days after surgery, like for this. Like, I'm not just going to do this and not complete it. I'm like, we're going. I'm like, my ankle's not going to break. Yeah. Is it going to be a little compromised? Sure. But I'm like, I'm going to give it. I'm going to go and I'm going to win and do my best, and it'll make for a pretty cool story, someday.
Here we are on the podcast talking about it.
There's that picture that went around viral.
Oh, yeah.
We'll put that up.
Excruciating pain.
We'll put that up. Don't worry. So you obviously went and did what you had to do on the day. Was there a moment that the flip switched when you were practicing? Like, okay, I'm back now.
I remember... I do remember like it kind of switched. Like, yeah, to your point, it's like I wrestled Jordan in a match, and then I think I wrestled like maybe like Tyler Berger, one of my teammates, or Mark Hall, and I was right there with them.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, like I don't have to beat them. I just got to beat the guys in front of me,
It's funny, like, because you wrestle a guy like Cole, and again, no disrespect to him, the pressure is almost on more with him because you're like, I can't lose to this guy. Holy shit, I just lost to him. But with Burroughs, you're like, okay, I just have to hang. And I think maybe that helps you more mentally in that moment than going against the Cole, because it's a lose-lose for you at that point.
Yeah, because like me and Jordan are very competitive, right? And we've trained together for the last 4 years. So we're very, like, the first time I ever wrestled him when he came to Philly, I mean, he teed off on me for like, I couldn't even touch him, right? But that's the sink or swim, right? With college, like, man, I'm going to glue myself to this dude. Like, you think you work hard, just go work out next to him. You can't, it's incredible. It's incredible. Like his work ethic, there's only two guys I've been around that are him and Sean Brady, who's a UFC fighter. Mm. I worked out with Sean for like a month in August, helping him, doing wrestling practices with him. He was getting ready to fight, I don't know, whoever it was back in September. He ended up getting a staph infection. But those two guys, I'm like, it's just incredible how hard they work. Like, I work hard, I do. And I put myself next to them, and I'm like, how can you sustain this and go for so long? It blew my mind. And, like, even with Sean, it's like, he's not a wrestling specialist, but this dude would beat majority of dudes in college just on work ethic alone and not getting tired. And like, you watch his fights and he just smothers people. Yeah. Same thing with Jordan. It's like, he can, one thing I say with Jordan is what makes him so impressive is like, right, it's only a 6-minute match, but he can wrestle the first minute like he can wrestle the last minute. Really? Or he can wrestle the last minute he can wrestle the first minute. So typically, right, you go for 6 minutes, you start out hot, right? And like, it's kind of like, now here's your breaking point of like, who's going to break first? Like, who's willing to go that extra second? But with him, there's no breaking point. He will just go and go and go. And it's so impressive to like watch. And it's really what has helped me a lot, like on this, senior level circuit of, just discipline and just work ethic alone. Like, I was a 4-time All-American, but it's like, I thought I worked hard until I put myself next to him on a bike sprint, in a stance of motion, in a drill. So back to your point of like 3 weeks ago, right? And like, we're very competitive. Like, the scores are pretty close. Like, we typically like, trade off and stuff. But if he were to go out and probably like beat me, like tech fall me, and that was one of the most anxious as I've been in a practice, because I hadn't wrestled him in I don't know, 3 months at this point. So I'm like, okay, now is like, me and my coach talked about it. They're like, look, this is your like test right now. Yeah. Like, I don't have to beat you, but like, yeah, if you go in and like you just absolutely destroy me, like, we're 2-3 weeks away at this point. Like, it's probably, maybe we'll try another week, but we were very competitive, and it just kind of gave me that confidence to be like, okay, I'm like right there. I'm like kind of back to, I'm back better than I was before, how I felt.
There's just so much that goes into it mentally. Like, I wonder how he approached that match, because obviously he doesn't want to beat your ass, but he's not going to.
Oh, no, he does.
Well,
he only has one speed.
That's my point. Is like, he's not going to go in there and be like, oh, let me take it easy and like help his ego, because that's not who he is. Oh, no. But at the same time, like, you did need that sort of confidence boost. So it's like, yeah, I just reflect back to like high school wrestlers, you know, priming a wrestler that you know has the potential, but maybe is lacking mentally because he's fucking 15 years old. How do you train that kid? I guess that's the question I'm asking you. How would you train that kid versus the guy that just has an air to him because he's 16 and he's cocky and maybe he's not as good of a wrestler? Would you coach them differently?
Man, that's a really good question. It's hard, right? I think some kids either have it or they don't. Yeah. Right. Like you can have all the skill in the world, but like to Mons' point, like if you lock up when the lights are on and like you're not a performer, you're going to have a really, really hard time. Right. And there's like, you can train, like, I mean, I've been around so many kids that, man, they beat my butt in the room. Right. But then they go out there and it's just like, they don't like everything that they've learned or taught. They don't have something that like can bring them almost back down to reality. So I think like, right. And like, right in college, they wanted us to go like see like some psychologists and stuff. Yeah. Like, and I never like, for me, I never found like in terms of like performance anxiety. Right. And I still like before every match, I could go up against Joe Schmo down the street, right? Like a guy that I know I could be blindfolded and you put me in an arena with a bunch of fans and stuff. Like I'm still, even though I know there's no way, like I'm still going to get the nerves, like they're happy nerves, good nerves, right? And it's like, you just got to learn how to channel them. But with psychologists and stuff, like I've personally never found them helpful. If I was ever dealing with a problem, I would like go to my friends, like my best friends that really, really knew me. So I remember I went like my senior year, I struggled in college with weight. And I started losing and I just couldn't get it figured. And they wanted me to like go see like the sports psychologist. And like, it was just, I was sitting there and like, it was basically like I was just talking to him and he was trying to get to know me. And I'm like, I'm not someone that's just going to open up myself to like some, you know, guy I've never met for this 3-month cycle. So I would just like talk to like some of my best friends and stuff about stuff I was dealing for. I'm not saying psychologists bad. For some people they work. Like I know for a fact, like for me personally, they didn't. But I think performance anxiety, like I don't really know the answer, right? To like a 15-year-old kid that's a killer in the room that can't figure it out. Like I feel like there's so much stuff you can probably do for it. And there's probably so much science now done on it. But like, I feel like it's one of those things like you gotta live for this. And I think having something to like, people put pressure on themselves because it's like, oh, my dad at 15 years old is spending $40,000 on club, or he's making me do this. Like I have to win, or I'm not, or he's gonna make me walk home from practice, like stuff like that. So they put this added pressure on themselves. Oh, I go to college and like my coach is gonna kill me if I don't win, right? Like so you have like this other outside stuff that could be bringing a bearing on you. Yeah. Where I think if you like believe in yourself, like you trust in your coaches, and like, you know, for me, like I'm a Christian, so like I just know that like my life's laid out already. Like I trust that God, like God's will for me is I'm gonna win or I'm gonna lose, and all I can do is wrestle my best. And it allows me to be free when I put so much pressure on myself in college, where when I All-Americaned my freshman, sophomore, junior year, it wasn't my freshman year. I was so happy. My sophomore, junior year, it was almost like this sense of relief. Like, I'm glad I did it. It's over. Like, I can take a break. I have time before next year. Like, and I created almost like this pressure on myself because it was all about winning, right? So I would wrestle a little more tense, but I was good enough to get it done, right? But I wasn't good enough to be national champ because it was like, I vividly remember when I wrestled Vincenzo in the semifinals. It was like, I hope I win this. I hope something good happens for me, right? It wasn't like I went in there and I was like, I'm going to take this match from him. Like, he's trying to take this from me. No, I'm going to take it from him. Right. So it's just like, it's hard, man. It really is.
It's again, you bring up God. Did you find God through wrestling, or were you always Christian?
No, I mean, I always probably like believed in something growing up, right? Like I come from like a Catholic family, typically North Jersey, or a bunch of Catholic Italians, exactly. Right? So I have to say, but I think I found, like, I don't want to say find God, because I was listening to Theo Von's podcast with Sketch the other day, and he's like, oh, you looking for the Lord? And he's like, Lord ain't lost, brother. Yeah, so I but that's for real. That's real, though. I thought that was funny. I think, and I listened to your podcast with Richie Van Houten on the way, and I mean, that podcast was incredible. His story is incredible, and the way he explained it, I was truly blown away by it. And, you know, I think maturity comes with it, right? You kind of get to this because like you get to this crossroads in your life where you start making like actual real decisions, right? Typically your parents make decisions for you until you really go off to college. Then you go off to college, you're on your own, you kind of do whatever you want. College, right? College is a toxic culture. Yeah. It really is. Your women, bars, all this stuff. It's toxic, and it's fun too at the same time.
Well, that's what
right?
makes it so toxic. Is how fun it is.
It's so fun. So I think for me, it's like I always believed in. I've been around some special people in my life, and I was always like, it was like almost like wrestling and God like correlated for me, where it was like, all right, like during wrestling season, I'm gonna be super disciplined. Like I'm gonna, read devotionals, I'm gonna pray, but then after season, I'm just gonna go out and do whatever I want. I'm gonna go to the bars, I'm gonna go to all these frat parties, all this stuff, right? Chase girls, like, just be a college kid. And it's just, it was like almost bringing me like farther away. And so it was when I graduated that, and I graduated and COVID happened. So I missed my last NCAA season ever, right? So I'm on track to be Virginia Tech's first four-time All-American. COVID happens. So I'm in probably like one of the darkest places, right? Like I don't know what I want to do, right? For a job. Like I hated wrestling. Like we're talking about resentment. It was like I was cutting. I went up to 174 my junior year, went back down to 165 my senior year. And when I tell you I was cutting a lot of weight, it was I'm talking like 15-pound swings every week. So it was like I'm working out 3 times a day just in terms of weight management. Like our days off, I'd have to go in there twice, sit in the sauna for an hour, then run at night. And it was so brutal that I grew so much hate towards it of like, and then I'm cutting weight all year, right? And a week before, our AD walks in the room and he's like, guys, like there's an emergency shutdown with COVID. So I'm just like a mess, right? I'm like, I did all the, I'm screaming, like I did all this weight cutting for nothing. Like, and then the NCAA doesn't give us back our final season, right? So it's like, I lost everything. I'm on track, right? And like for me to become Virginia Tech's first 4-time All-American, like that was almost like, what like was my God at this point. I'm like, man, I'm gonna be cemented my legacy forever in the history books, and that became everything that mattered to me. And it was literally like taken away from me like that, right? So I'm going through this process of I don't really know what I want to do. I'm partying, doing all this stuff, and I'm just like, man, my life, I vividly remember it was like my life, and like Mons had been down the shore. Like we were like, that's what we did. When I came home, I'd go down to the shore. I'd spend all week in there. We'd party like up till 6 a.m. Right. And like he saw some of my wild side. Right. And I vividly remember and I'm having a blast doing this, right? I'm with my boys, we're on the boats, like at the shore, all this stuff. And I'm just like vividly remember like my life, like can really go 2 directions here. I can either kind of continue down this path, not stay in wrestling, or I can continue wrestling and try and get my life back on the tracks. Cause, people deal with things all differently, right? Like some breaking points for people, right? And is like a death or something. And for me, it was like this being taken away from me when you like really think in the grand scheme of things of like what other people go through, right? Like with COVID, like people were losing like close family members. And I'm like over here upset that I didn't get a freaking trophy from the NCAA, right? So I think when I like put that into perspective and, I felt like God was really working through me there. He's like, hey man, like, right? And the devil's going to tempt you too, right? He's going to hang this here. And, when you're like, you want that, right? It's nice and shiny. And I'm like, man, that sounds fun, but I know I have to go down this path, and is ultimately why I moved to Philly. Because my coach was a leader, right? He was a leader. He was a Christian man. He had values. And I'm like, man, this is someone I want to be like when I'm older, and I'm going to be in a great training situation. Like if I'm going to do this, like I got to leave, Virginia Tech, which was a super hard decision for me. I have to leave my friends and my family that I've been with. And, you're with these guys for 5 years in these close quarters, right? They're your best friends, right? And like you go, it's not like you're partying with them every weekend. Like you're going through some of the hardest things in your life, right? Cutting weight, like fighting for your teammates, all this stuff. So you go really close, you grow really close to them. So like to leave that and follow, but I knew it's what I had to do. I was like, my life is kind of, I don't even know where I am. I felt like my head was spinning. I had no money. I'm like, I'm living at home now for like 3 months, and I'm like, my parents, I love them to death, but right, they're driving me nuts, and they're like, are you gonna start paying rent? I'm like, I don't have money, I don't have a job yet. Like I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if I want to coach. I don't know if I want to just go work at the Subway down the street, right? And it was just like kind of this like coming moment of like, all right, I have to stop what I'm doing and kind of start, going down this direction. That was kind of just like my like almost epiphany, I guess, in a nutshell.
Wow. Okay. But it's so funny because that's not funny. Just the extreme is what you almost needed. You know what I mean? It wouldn't have forced you into this next stage of life, like where you did really find God and now you're devoted and locked in, if it didn't happen. And I think God had to show you something like, hey, I'm going to make you bust your ass, cut all this weight, and then strip everything you thought was important away from you. Yeah. So now you realize what is important, like that perspective thing. And you mentioned how, with COVID, people dealt with real problems like, losing loved ones. And the pain, though, is probably the same pain you felt is probably almost similar to the pain that somebody felt when they lost a loved one. Yeah. And it just took you to take a step back to be like, wait, I shouldn't feel this way towards something that really doesn't matter as much as that. And it's just so interesting, man. Like, why do we need something like that to force us in the direction we know we should be going anyway?
Yeah. I think everyone's rock bottom, right, is different. And if like, right, biblically, like throughout history, like God uses broken people, right? Typically. And I think this is where kind of, like through the Bible, right, like God, like Jesus heals, right? People that can't walk, right, allows the blind to see, right? So biblically, this is true, right? And I think when people hit rock bottom in their life, right, whether that may be, right, like I would listen to the Richie's podcast with you yesterday, right, like his rock bottom was like losing his company, right? And then reality woke him up when his best friend's brother passed away, like in Afghanistan, right? So it's like all this stuff, and then you're like, you have this moment of like realization of, you're like, man, there's something way bigger out there, right? So for me, it was like COVID or losing my last year, like that felt like everything. And then I took a step back and I'm like, man, like my life isn't where I want it to be,
right?
And so and it's not easy, right? Like to like, it's like this commitment of, I'm about to put everything I have into this, right? And typically when you hit rock bottom, right, there's a like Mons was saying, when you're that uncomfortable where like you want to crawl out of your skin, right, is it's where you have the most growth. Yeah. Right? So I'm at like
I think to your point is, it's always, and I always remember this, somebody told me this, and it sticks with me forever, and always will be sticking with me, is, in times of crisis is really what you need to really find out who you truly are. Because a lot of times, sometimes you'll hit rock bottom and you'll all of a sudden think that you forgot who you were, but you know who you are. Yeah. And sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom and in times of crisis to figure out, and remind yourself who you are. Yeah. Imagine if the sun's always shining, like you're not going to try to change anything or figure out, hey, I could be better in this area. If, you're skipping around in a field of flowers. You know what I mean? It has to be times of crisis. That's where you really find out who you are and what your place is in this world.
Well, it's funny because we were just talking before you came here about Goggins was on the TV, and everybody obsesses over the hard work and discipline, and I get all of that for sure.
Guy's crazy.
But I said to Mom, I was like, look, the guy's crazy, but like doesn't seem happy. Like, why would you go and provoke resistance so hard and live a life that doesn't align with who you think you are? And I'm not saying that's not who he is. I think he needed that extreme because he was the extreme in the opposite sense. But nowadays we live with a generation that's like, if something's hard, that means I have to keep doing it. And if I don't like doing this, it means maybe it's worth pursuing. And I'm not always aligned with that. But on the other end of things, when things are a little bit too easy, like my life right now, I could be very transparent and say it could be one of the easiest lives ever. I could wake up whenever I wanted to. I could film a silly little TikTok, make the money I need to make, go out and party on the weekends and do the whole thing over again. And what I've noticed is I fall and prey to that, right? I live in an area where it's very easy to go and do those things. But what happens on a Sunday when I wake up in almost tears of like, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
Emptiness.
It's emptiness. I wake up and I'm with the wrong people. I don't like who I see in the mirror, and I have to snap back out of that. And I think the hardest part is that I don't really hit extreme rock bottoms day by day. You know, I'm not staring death in the face or risk of losing a career. It's like I can pretend and fake that feeling doesn't exist and repeat the cycle over and over again. But until I really face reality, be like, this isn't who you are, this isn't who you're aligned with, it'll never change.
Yeah.
So those extremes, I think, are super important. If you have to put yourself through them, like the self-induced suffering, I think, you know, a lot of these guys talk about, it's a necessity.
Right.
You know,
a lot of the times too, the people are saying it and speaking it, but they're not really living it.
that's the difference too. Because everybody on a podcast can go talk about like I'm rah rah.
Everybody
this,
says
yeah, everybody says it.
And you see it for a glimpse on social media, and that's why, you know, depression's at the all-time high, and we could keep going on and on because, you know, the attention span is like 5 seconds now. You're not really appreciating the work that's being put in front of you. I just think that, you know, a lot of people are full of shit. You know, you got to know somebody to really see that they're doing it and living it every day. You know, those are the people that I'm gonna listen to.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, it's difficult. But I think that, you know, there's a reason why you see people that have everything in the world, but they're still very unhappy or they're depressed. And I think that's because they're not really fulfilling their purpose, whatever that may be. And I think getting to your purpose requires, you know, some sort of sacrifice, some sort of thing that you don't like to do every single day. Like, we didn't like to go to practice every single day, you know, just to get 0.0001% better, even if that is the case. Right. A lot of times we're having bad days and we're like questioning ourselves, just to get our hand raised at the end of the day for that split millisecond. Yep. You know, that was everything to us. So, you know, we're so used to doing that, and, you know, that hard work pays off. And I don't think that saying is just put out there just for shits and giggles. I think that's an actual thing.
Well, I can't help but think every time you both tell these stories of like the extreme discipline and hard work, like the day by day seems so miserable. And Jordan Burroughs put it to you, I think the best he could have is take it day by day. Yeah. That's got to help you live so present, because you cannot live in the future when you know that you have it. It never ends. Yeah. Like, I think I can hop on, again, I train jiu-jitsu and maybe 3-4 times a week. I can hop on a mat on a Monday and bust my ass, like really work my body to its breaking point, because I know that I can literally just take off tomorrow if I really need to. You know, I'm good. Tuesday, I'm feeling like shit. I'm not gonna go on a mat. Wednesday, I'm not gonna go on a mat. So I can live in the future moment, because I know my future can be a lot better than the present. But for you guys, you have to force yourself to enjoy and almost find enjoyment in that extreme suffering and pain.
To that point, real quick, when I started my role at JP Morgan, you know, my mentor put me in touch with a guy named Carlos Hernandez. He's the CEO of the investment bank. Like the first week, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm already being the CEO of JP Morgan's investment bank. And even my manager was like, how the hell did you score that conversation? I was like, my mentor was friends with him. You know, I'm gonna go up to his office on the 30-something floor and have a conversation with him. So I went, and I remember him starting to speak, and he said, you know the difference between me and everybody else? And I said, no. He said, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't have to do this stuff. I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. I go for a run. He's like 50-something years old. And then I go to work. He's like, a lot of the people, maybe they'll start doing it, right? They'll start doing it. But the difference between me and them is that every single time that alarm clock goes off at 4 o'clock, I am getting up and I'm going for a 4 or 5 mile run every single day. Everybody else up, you know, let me just stay in my bed a little longer. You know, I can just do it tomorrow. And they're inconsistent. But every single day, rain or shine, I'm going out there and I'm going for a 4 or 5 mile run. And I think that's what really sets apart the difference between people and their work ethic. And when they go out and say, hey, I'm doing this, or I'm grinding this hard, and I think you need to suffer, like, they're doing it part-time. Exactly. They're not doing it full-time. If they are, you know, then you'll see what kind of people they are when you sit in front of them. Right,
but I think the problem, again, that generation is different because they didn't have anything to look at and get like inspired and motivated from, which can be bad if you're trying to go from zero to McFadden, right? Like, you're not going to.
That's zero to McFadden.
Right. Like, you may train like him maybe for a day, and after that day, you're gonna be like, I am cooked. I'm never doing this again. But McFadden didn't go from zero to a McFadden. You know what I mean? Like, you even had to go through like the struggles of and you didn't notice it because you were a younger guy, progressively getting better over time. And I think the point that your boss was making is like, just get a little bit better every day and stay consistent with something. I just heard Chris Williamson talking about, if you lied to a best friend the way you lied to yourself, that best friend wouldn't be your friend anymore.
Yeah.
If you tell yourself every morning I'm going to get up for a run, or I'm not going to hit snooze, and you keep hitting snooze, you're not going to believe yourself anymore. And that self-confidence is going to diminish very quickly.
100%.
This is why is why the world's fat though, right? If like you look at our obesity rates too, is like because everyone wants instant gratification. No one's willing to actually like, and I'm not even talking about athletes. This is just right. What's the New Year's resolution? It's called, right? Yeah. It's like if you go to the gym for a month, like it's really not going to do anything for you. You're actually probably going to hate it more because you're probably going to be more tired by the end of your first week that you're like, man, I don't really want to go today. Right. But it's like in those times where like you don't want to do something and you know you have to, like there are more days probably now that I don't want to train, but I know that I have to. And I know that when I get there into the room, like I don't want to wake up at 7, have to go in an hour early to do rehab and heat my body up. And right, I'd much rather sleep in. Right?
How good do you feel though when you're done with?
When I'm done, it's just dopamine release, all this. And it's like, man, those practices where I'm like, on a Thursday or a Friday, I just put 8 workouts in a week. And it's like, hey, we have 9 a.m. matches and my alarm goes off at 7 and I'm like, or 6:45 or whatever. And I'm just like, man, I could snooze my alarm and sleep till 10 o'clock right now. How great would that feel? But it's like, no, I know that this day is going to be a great day of training and it's only going to help me try and reach my goals. But the average human being is not going to want to do that, right? There's this new, what do you think? It's called like 72 days or
75 hard.
75 hard. But what it does is it's trying to create a habit.
Right.
Right. Because it's like you go to gym for 3 months and it's like, yeah, you might see micro changes, but it's like if you like people that make transformation, like this takes years and years. If you're like, I don't know, 300 pounds and you just go to gym for a month, you might, lose a little bit of weight, but you're not going to be where you want. Like this is going to take years and years of just being in there and you have to love it and create it. And then on the days you don't want to go, it's like, you have to make it into this routine. It's discipline. It's discipline, and
absolutely.
World's undisciplined right now.
I think, the reason I think the world's undisciplined is because of how high their expectations are for how good they're going to feel before a workout. I talked about this with Bo when he was on. I was like, I could watch a highlight tape of Bo Nickel wrestling. I get jacked up about it, and I think it's so cool. And I'm going to tell myself, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. tomorrow and go train and yada, yada. But if I'm an average Joe and 6 o'clock comes and I don't feel the way I felt the night before, I'm upset at myself. Whereas you have come to grips with the realization that I know I'm not going to feel good and I have to suck it up and I know I'm going to feel better. It's going to be worth it. But I think people have to stop feeling like they're going to be this excited. It's not your life isn't a music video. Your life isn't a motivational TikTok.
That's the thing. I compare it to like a staircase. Like you start at the first step, but everybody's looking at the top step of where they want to be. But they're not willing to put in the next step and then the next step and then the next step to get to that top step. They're just looking at there and why aren't I there yet?
I want to take the elevator out.
Right. I want to take the elevator up. There are no elevators in
that's
life.
the problem.
There are no elevators in life. And that's why wrestling is just the best sport in the world is like, that real quick. And it's either you're a wrestler or you're not a wrestler.
Yeah.
It's either you could wrestle or at least learn to wrestle and just be resilient every single day or just quit.
That's the thing too. And I think a lot of people, when I go back to like what you're aligned with, it's not a bad thing to not be a quote unquote wrestler. Don't beat yourself up about like not doing or doing things you don't align with. You know what I mean? Like I look at my cousin Eddie, who's my roommate, right? Works very successful job. He's a salesman in the city. 29 years old. He's like, I would never get on a fucking mat right now and grapple around with other men. Like, what are you, nuts? And I'm like, you know what? If I've never done it before, starting at 29 years old just doesn't even seem like something I would ever want to do. And that's fine. Like, there's no reason why you have to force yourself into doing something like this. But a routine is crucial. And for you, again, like, what are you doing now? Does it even come close to your routine as it was in college?
No, routine wise, yes, but in terms of training, it's I don't train as much because I can't. My body won't allow me. Like I like to tell people, wrestling years is like dog years, right? Like every year you wrestle, it takes a year, 7 years off. You're like in college because like it's so brutal. It's like the amount of injuries I've had, like surgeries, torn this, torn that, but it's like you wrestle through them or you try to at least.
Yeah.
Right. It's like so now it's like my training is much more calculated. It's much more pulled back. Do I still train very hard? Yes, but I don't train as much because I can't.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you listen to, I just listened to an interview with like David Taylor and, he he talked about it. He's like, in college, like you train, like you do what the coaches tell, right? And it's like you have to, because you're gearing up for a whole season, right? As a RTC athlete trying to win a world championship, I only compete a few times a year. Where college, you're wrestling from November all the way to March, and you're going every single weekend.
It goes slow.
It is horrible.
Feels like
no
5
holidays. Like I didn't even go home for Christmas my senior year. I couldn't because I would eat too much.
Right.
And it's just like it's brutal. So like now my routine, right? I typically have my routine, right? I wake up in the morning at 7. I do a little reading, right? I probably leave, or we practice at 10 now. So I wake up 7:30 or whatever, do a little bit of reading, make my coffee, eat my breakfast, go in around like 9:15, rehab, heat my body up, right? To get ready for practice at 10. So I'm waking up almost 2.5 to 3 hours before I need to be there, just so I'm ready for my practice at 10.
Man now, bro.
And it's hard, man. Some days I'm like, there's some days I'll snooze my alarm till like 8:30, and I'm like, oh crap, like I gotta go. And right, and I know like, man, I'm not gonna have it today as much because I'm rushing. I didn't get I'm off my routine. But like there's certain points in your routine where it's like, oh, whatever, because you go overseas to wherever to go wrestle. It's like whatever routine you had is gonna go out the window there. You don't know what food you're gonna be served or what grocery stores, like where the nearest like supermarket is, right? So it's like it's good to stay on a routine, but you also have to be kind of roll with the punches at the same time.
Where are you coaching now?
I'm just wrestling.
Oh, no more coaching.
Just wrestling in Philly. So I help coach at the All I See Is Gold Academy. It's Jordan's club, which has been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been great, man. Just because I've gotten to grow up with such great club coaches that helping coach these kids too. And it doesn't take a lot of time out of my day. Like I'm not like sacrificing, like typically clubs run at night. We practice in the morning, get my lift in after practice or cardio or whatever. So, it's been awesome just kind of getting to give back to the younger generation, because South Jersey wrestling, they need some help right now, right? North Jersey is it is a unbelievable wrestling area. Like you have Delbar and Bergen, Blair, Joe's, but even just the clubs in this area, there's so many. You have the Edge right here, Apex, Buxton's, what else? Like, I mean, those are 3 just really good clubs. So down south, there's not a whole lot of clubs. So Jordan, coming back here has started this academy, and we're looking for places, but he kind of asked me to almost like, be the head coach there, which is awesome, right? It's like, which now puts me at a crossroads of like what I want to do later in life, because I had always just thought, right, like I want to coach college when I'm done competing, but not every day does, arguably the greatest wrestler of all time be like, hey, I want you to help lead this and build this alongside me. So, right, it's like, these opportunities come. It's like, if this is something I really want to do, like probably going to jump on the opportunity, right? It's like, it's been so amazing just getting to like, work with kids. And I've coached now for the last year there, and just kind of seeing their growth, and they put a smile on my face too. I went to school, like my degree is in human development, which is typically it's education, working with young kids. So I worked with young kids in work study. I've always just done camps and clinics, typically with young kids. So like they put a smile on my face, and I know how valuable having a really good club coach was for me at such a young age, to then, it's some of the closest people in your life, when you get there. Like Buxton is so, like, I'm so close to him. Coach Keith, I'm so close to him. I've been with them since I could wrestle, right? And those are some of the closest people in my wrestling life,
Now you get a chance to do that for somebody else. And it's, again, we go back to just the trusting in God. God is not providing you with 2 good options. You know what I mean? Back in the day when COVID hit, he provided you with, hey, you can go down the dark path, the light path, and you obviously pick the dark for a little bit. But either decision you make, whether it's, collegiate Division I coaching or working with Burroughs, they would both work out for you. So it's almost like, you don't turn back and you pick one, and it's gonna be good.
That's where prayer comes in handy. You just gotta whatever. Like, so my plan right now, if I could lay out my roadmap, which we know it's probably not going to go according to plan, not my plan at least, but if I could lay out a roadmap right now, I'd go win 3 world titles the next year, go win an Olympic gold in 2028 in LA, and be done wrestling, have a lot of money in the piggy bank, move over to Jersey, right? Just help Jordan build this club out, right? It's, and because with college coaching, right, there's and this is what's crazy is like, so I coached at Drexel the last 3 years.
Right.
So I thought, this is what I want to do, right? But there's so much other stuff about college coaching that, like the travel, the recruiting, like you're off weekends, you're not off, like you're going to high school tournaments, maybe a kid's house, right?
Jesus.
And, maybe 4 years down the road, like maybe that's what I want to do, right? But right now, like my goal is to win, world championships right now. Like that's my goal. And like I have 4 years, 4 years, maybe less, maybe more, I don't know, right? But my goal is to go one more Olympic cycle and, ride off into the sunset and, hopefully by then. But this is what's great about wrestling is I have 4 years, right? I'm wrestling now. It's like I have time to kind of set myself up. So I'm playing with things. Like I tried out college coaching. I'm like, man, okay, like I could see myself doing this. I don't know if this is for me. Now I'm doing club coaching. I'm like, man, I really love this. I'm doing functional patterns. Like I'm like, man, I really love this. This is something I could see myself doing long time. So like I'm playing with these things, like, and trying to, as I'm pursuing trying to, make a world team for the United States, I'm also like, it's important to have other things that you can focus on, or else, right? I train 2 hours a day wrestling and then an hour lift or an hour cardio, right? So I'm only training 3 hours. So I have a lot of other time to do things. But if I just sit on my couch all day and I'm not like doing anything with that time, I'm not really growing at all, right? So I'm trying to set up, right? Like, I'm married, right? Eventually, God willing, have a family. So it's like I'm trying to put my future family in the best possible position. Right. So it's like I'm not just wrestling and it's like, okay, once the door closes with wrestling, because I could have a career-ending injury tomorrow. I don't know, right? It could happen. It happens, not all the time, but like it's happened to people, right? And knock on wood, right? Or that won't happen. But right, it's like you have to be willing to, if I go to 2028 and that door closes, it's like I don't want to be just left like I have no idea what I'm gonna do. Right. So I think it's important to, try things and kind of see what you like fall in love with after like life after wrestling. And this is, a problem with a lot of wrestlers is you're so disciplined for so long that when you're done with wrestling, like a lot of people don't know what to do and they struggle real hard.
It's like white noise. It's like you're lost.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
In a sense.
Right, because like now
It's
you didn't.
such a high too,
Yeah.
and everything is just quiet.
Right, how do you work a fucking desk job now? You know what I mean? Like
I could never.
Yeah.
I could never. I have to be doing something.
Doing
Whoa,
something.
whoa.
Fucking desk. I wear a
Mr.
suit.
JP
I wear
Morgan
a suit all fucking day,
but
dude.
listen. That's not my plan anyway. And I realized pretty quickly I don't want to work for somebody the rest of my life.
But you know what I mean? You're not doing a regular desk job. But the difference is you, like Dave mentioned, like you prep yourself and prime yourself for this. You know what I mean? You knew wrestling wasn't going to be the end of the road for you. You knew you wanted to do something different anyway.
Right, and that's part of the reason why I went to Duke is because I knew I didn't want to wrestle after college.
Right.
I made that decision. I wanted to be in a suit and tie and be on Wall Street. That's
good
what
all
I
the
want to
time.
do. But I knew that prior, and that started become more likely as I wasn't performing to the best of my abilities as well, and then I was hurt. It kind of fell into that, like, hey, you know what? That's I had a plan, and it's just falling into that quicker than I thought it would.
For sure. Well, that's God sort of showing you again your path.
Exactly.
It's just, so now you're coaching. When is your next, I guess, Olympic trial? Would be
4 years from now.
4 years. So what do you do prior to the 4 years?
So the world
team.
world team. So I had to go up to 86 kilos this year. So, and this is what also stinks about wrestling. So my natural weight that I wrestle at is 79 kilos, which is 174 pounds.
Okay.
I walk around about 190, right? Like just right now I probably weigh 188, 190, whatever. The Olympic weight class is 86 kilos, which is either 190 or 74 kilos, which is 163 pounds. So I cut a good bit of weight to get to 79, but I cut it right and I feel good like when I perform there. So it's a 27 pound weight gap between 74 kilos and 86 kilos.
insane.
Yeah, we
It
talked
goes
about that,
from 10
adding
to
another
6
weight.
weights. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So now you're going to go the weight above.
79. Yeah,
79.
so I wrestled 86 because I tried back in 2021 to go down to 74, and I was following this strict plan, right? Making 79 kilos, then 78, 77. And I'd wrestled the match at 79 kilos. And I'm like, okay, next month I'm gonna weigh 78, then 77. We're gonna teeter-totter down. Wrestled on like they were doing these cards during COVID, right? Because no one was wrestling. Yeah. So I wrestled a card that set like made 174 pounds. I'm like, feel good. Eat, whatever. It was like a 3-hour weigh-in or whatever, and eat, drink, whatever, go out, wrestle, go out to dinner that night. I'm like, I'm probably like only like 180 right now. I checked my weight. I was like 188. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way I can make 74 kilos, right? So now I have a decision, right? Going up to, hopefully, right, they put another weight class in the Olympics. But I have a decision in 2020. I mean, really right now, whether like, am I going to, when the Olympics rolls around in 28, am I going to be able to either, one last like, death cut that I can do well, or is my body not going to allow it, or am I going to be able to get big enough for 86 kilos?
Man, these are things that people don't think about. Like you have if there was a weight class in between, how much better you'd be off, but so talk me through the way your body feels at the lower weight class and then how your competition feels. Like, are they that much bigger, that much stronger?
Yeah, so I had a few little injuries I was dealing with back in the fall, trying to get bigger to go up to 86. So I was lifting more, I was eating more, I was doing this. My body had just put on a little more weight from all this, that my joints and my like knees and stuff, like I was just getting tweaked, like weird injuries too, like tweak like the back of my knee. Then I tweaked like my hip flexor. I'm just like, I thought I pulled my groin. They're like, no, it's your hip flexor. I'm like, how the heck do you even hurt your hip flexor? I was just like overtraining, like putting on, like trying to just put on size, where we just kind of made the decision, like, I'm just going to wrestle my natural weight this year. It's my only option, right? Like, I'm not trying to get up to 200 pounds to cut down. The 189 is the weight class. It's like, I'm going to have to do this, and I'm planning on going one more cycle. So like, we're going to really make a push to, do our best to make the team in LA. Right. So there's a lot, right, of uncertainty in the next 2 years. Like Mon said, if, they add another weight class, like hopefully it'd be 79 kilos, right? There's a 30-pound weight gap between that, That's insane. So it's crazy. But we saw at this Olympic trials, there's a kid, he's ranked, he wrestles at Michigan's RTC, went to Michigan, multiple time All-American. His name's Alec Pantaleo. Yeah. He's been
we follow each other.
Yeah. He's been ranked top 5 in the world at 70 kilos for a while. So he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. He just beat the world silver medalist back in December. Like, he goes overseas. He's
so slick. I watch his videos. I'm like,
he is hammer.
So
and
fast.
You see how strong he is, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that guy having to cut 10 more pounds. So he did it to try and make the Olympic team.
He wrestles at 70?
Joey's weight, right?
70, yeah.
70 is what, 154, right? Something like that.
Yeah, 154, and then it goes down to 143. So, and you're even at a lower weight.
143.
Who is?
Pantaleo went 143.
Oh my God.
He cut all this weight to 143. So he ends up losing to Nick Lee in the quarterfinals. And Alec is one of the toughest guys, right? He lost the year he was favored to like make the team was last year. He ended up like getting pinned at the US Open in his first match. Just, I hate to say get caught and pinned, right? Because kid like threw him, but it was like, if he didn't get pinned, like he would have came back and like destroyed the guy, right?
Oh
so
my God.
He ends up wrestling 8 matches all the way back to 3rd. So his goal of making the world team is done. Wrestles 8 matches back to 3rd. He tweeted after the first day, like, hey, my team and I have decided, like, it's not good for my health to do this weight cut again. I'm 20 pounds overweight. He was 20 pounds over.
So he walks around with like 170?
143.
Oh, 143. I was like 65.
Yeah, so 165. Okay. So he probably walks around 170. He wrestles 153. So yeah, he probably walks around.
At the time, he was wrestling 153. You're saying?
No, 143. This was back at the trials.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he tweeted like he lost. Right. He wants to wrestle back for 3rd, but he just can't make the weight. It's 20-pound weight cut. It's not like crazy. UFC, right? Where it's like you get 36 hours away, and like you have to cut 10, 20 pounds or whatever it is, and then go perform on a 2-hour weigh-in.
Well, now what is the point if you can't make trials? You have to place first. What's the point of him wrestling back to 3rd?
Yeah, it's just about like
pride at that point.
Yeah,
really,
essentially.
That is insane.
So a lot of people don't wrestle back, but it's like it shows a lot to wrestle back, right? It's like your dream, your dream of being on the Olympic team is done, but I'm gonna try and go get the next best thing. It sucks. It sucks. I've done it.
Shout out Joey too.
Yeah,
wrestling all the way back.
Yeah, Joey loses first round. So like Joey, right, at 65 kilos, Joey McKenna is one of the top wrestlers in the world. He loses first round and he wrestles all the way back, right, to third place. And it's like, what do you get? You get
redemption.
Yeah.
You get nothing. That's insane.
But it's like, right, it's like, so your dream of, representing the red, white, and blue is gone. And now you have to go wrestle back. And it's one of the toughest things to do. It happened to me last year at the US Open. So I'd won the US Nationals, US Open in 2022. 2023, I lost to Chance Marsteller in the semis. And I'm like, man, like, because I thought I was on that tournament. I'm like, okay, I'm going to win this. I'm going to go wrestle Jordan in the finals at Final X. Chance beat me. I'm whatever, over freaking 5-6 pounds overweight. And I'm just like, man, I hate this. And I remember going back to a point earlier that year, I had wrestled in this tournament in New York called the Bill Farrell tournament. It's the MYAC. And I lose a heartbreaker in the semifinals. A heartbreaker. I'm beating the guy who's beat me twice. He's from Ukraine. He's a 2-time world bronze medalist. I'm beating him 6-2 with 10 seconds left. And he trap arm. It's a move. Trap arms me, rolls me, beats me 7-6. At the buzzer, I'm like done. I'm a mess. Like, I'm like, I don't want to wrestle back. I don't want to do this. I end up wrestling back. I win my Conci semi match. And then I'm wrestling third place against this kid, Alex Marinelli, who I've wrestled 10 times throughout my career. Yeah. He's from Iowa. If you guys know anything about Iowa, they're going to wrestle hard. So before this match, and I'd beaten Alex that summer in Poland, like beat him 10-0, like this. So I knew he wanted this match back. And I'm in my head, I'm watching the finals happen right before me, and I'm like, I should be there. This dude's gearing up to wrestle me, like that he's going to beat me. And I could care less in the world. I'm like, man, I should be there. And I'm like, man, this is the last guy I want to wrestle. Like, this dude is going to come at me and just start throwing haymakers. And he beat my butt so bad that match. And I wrestled like such a coward that at the Open, I lose to Chance. I'm obviously upset, but I'm like, you know what? I felt way worse, not battling back and for the performance that I wrestled. And I ended up beating Michael Kemmer on the backside, who was a 4-time All-American. I had the Iowa tournament. I beat Kemmer. So this is what I'm saying. You wake up the next day after cutting weight all night, and now I have to go wrestle a 4-time All-American within 2 hours. And then I beat Michael Kemmer, and then I have to wrestle Marinelli again for third place. So in my head, I'm like, I remember this feeling, how I felt back in November of like wrestling like an absolute coward that, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to get the next best thing. And I took third, and it was one of the most happiest I've been after not winning, just because I was so proud of myself for like doing something that was so hard that a lot of people can't do. It's like, I'm cutting weight for what? Like, my dream of making the world team is gone. It's gone right there. And it's like, you know what? Like, my dad always preached to me as a young kid. It's like, it's either first or third. Like, first, you win first, but third is the toughest guy in the bracket because he's willing to lose and come back and win however many matches.
Insane. So every year they have trials.
Yes.
Okay. So
even in the Olympic year, they'll do non-Olympic weight worlds.
Got it. So now 2024 trials just happened, right?
Olympic trials.
Olympic trials. Yeah. So now you have to wait for next year to.
No, September is our non-Olympic world team trials, and then the non-Olympic world championships are in October.
So now what happens if you win in September?
I go on to I wrestle for a world championship in October, which is cool. So it's like, it's not, I don't have to wait a full year.
So you win in September, win October. Are you now on the team?
I'm on I'm a world champ. If I win in October,
September, he makes the team. If he makes the team in September, then he's wrestling in the world championships in October. He wins the world championships, he's a world champ.
He's a world champ, but that's not the Olympics.
No.
That's separate.
Olympics is in August, and it's only 6 weight classes. There's 10 weight classes. There's only 6 weight classes. So this is why you have these guys doing these death drops, right? And back then you could, because they were night before weigh-ins. So if this was a night before weigh-in, and I would have went 74 kilos, because I would have had time to recover.
Okay.
Just, what, 2 hours?
They're 2-hour weigh-ins.
You can't even put anything really in your stomach.
That's fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah. So if you have a bad weight cut, you're done, because you're eating and drinking for probably like the first, or eating for like the first 10 minutes, then drinking. And then in an hour goes by, you have to go warm up.
Yeah.
In college, back when I wrestled in college, or we wrestled in college, 1 hour weigh-ins.
1 hour, yeah.
1 hour weigh-ins.
Why?
So you make weight, you warm up before you weigh in, you literally grab like a banana and a bar, drink, 15 minutes go by. If you're the first match up, like you're up in like 30, 40 minutes.
And you're getting a crazy warm up in. Like we're wrestling like almost live matches like right before just to blow our lungs out and get ready.
Yeah.
That sounds miserable.
It's hard.
So these you win again. Does every world champion now make the Olympic team, or is it separate?
No, separate.
Separate,
So yeah,
okay.
so the Olympics are only every 4 years. So from 2020.
Oh, so world trials and Olympic trials are two separate things.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I'm getting confused here. Who are the 6 American Olympic wrestlers?
Spencer Lee at 57 kilos. He's a 3-time national champ from Iowa. 65 was Zane Rutherford.
They
He
just
was
both
qualified.
qualified.
Oh
I
yeah.
had to qualify too. So
Why?
if you want to speak on that, those two weights.
So yeah. So
So
you
that's like 65 kilograms is like the death. It's like
it's
the
the
bad
hard.
luck
That what
weight.
Joey wrestles at is. It's like Europeans are a little smaller than
I was gonna say, that's
Americans.
so small.
So 65 is like they're like normal, like for us, right? And this is what's crazy about 170 or 79 kilos not being an Olympic. Like you look up the average weight in America, right? Of like it's like people weigh like 165, 175, 185 pounds, right?
That's
Like
right
that's
around there.
typically right around there, right? And it's like, but over there, the 65 kilogram pounders, which 143, these guys are there. It's the hardest weight in the world.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in the world. So at 57 and 65, they didn't medal at last year's world championship. So then you don't qualify the weight. And so they had to
Like
go.
the American team doesn't qualify.
Right.
Okay,
if you don't medal at the worlds, then you have another opportunity to do it, and it's called the Pan Am Games. So it's against like other countries, and they not Spencer and Zane, it was whoever the 2 world team reps were before, failed to qualify. So this is what's crazy about Spencer and Zane. They go make the Olympic trials, right? They win the Olympic trials. Like Spencer Lee beat Gilman and Zane beat Nick Lee. So you're thinking like, man, these dudes are going to be so happy. 3 weeks later, they got to go turn around and go to Turkey, which just was this past week. They have to go to Turkey, make weight all over again. Meanwhile, Zane is the world champ at 70 kilos. So he's cutting a lot of weight. So he just made weight. He's probably 10, 12 pounds over. He's got to go turn around and do this again 3 weeks later. Same thing with Spencer. They cut a lot of weight, or it looks like it. Well, I know they do, but they got to go do this in 3 weeks. And they both qualified, and Zane lost second round, but that guy made the finals. So he got pulled back in the repechage, it's called. It's like the wrestlebacks. He had to win 4 matches on the backside. So he wrestled 7 matches in 2 days
Talk about
against
pressure.
my God.
when the entire United States is riding on you to make
To
And the
make the
second
weight.
match, in the wrestleback, or maybe the third, he won 2-2 on criteria.
Oh my! What was the criteria?
He scored last
He
takedown.
scored last, or he had the biggest move. I don't remember what it was.
Okay, so they then qualified the weight for America to like, at least compete.
So
in
now,
the-
now
we
they
have
can go to
all
Olympics.
6.
got it. So now, so it's got it.
But last time, Jordan Oliver lost when
in
he
the semifinals.
because Joey beat Rutherford, and then
Yep.
Joey wrestled Jordan Oliver, but then Joey lost to Jordan Oliver. Jordan Oliver had to go qualify, and he lost. That was 4 years ago or 5 years
Right.
ago.
Okay, so that weight we weren't competing in the
Correct.
Olympics. Okay.
Yeah. So some countries, right?
So you win the trials and you can't even wrestle
You
at the
stink at
Olympics.
wrestling, like
You're not competing, yeah, of course.
you just don't even send the team. But 57 especially, 65 Zane Rutherford, 74 Kyle Dake,
Right, he just beat Nolf.
Nolf.
Okay.
86 Aaron Brooks,
Okay.
beat David Taylor,
Yep.
which David Taylor was the number 1 pound for pound wrestler in the world. Crazy. That's crazy. 97 Kyle Snyder, who's Captain America. Dude is an awesome guy. Like between him and Jordan, for being as like successful as they are 2 like the most humble people with like that status
Right.
that I've ever been around. Right. They're amazing people, great ambassadors for the sport. And then heavyweight is Mason Paris, who wrestled at Michigan. He was a Hodge Trophy winner. Mason's an awesome dude too. I hosted him on a visit to Virginia Tech when I was in college.
Oh, really?
He's so fun, yeah. So that was a fun visit for him.
Oh, I'm sure you had a good time. That was back when you were dealing with the demons.
Yeah,
Damn, man. So you have a packed up year coming up.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, right, like my summer's kind of cut short. It's like kind of figuring out right now if we're going to compete, this summer, as like a warm-up tournament for the Worlds. But I'm also still dealing with my ankle, just trying to get it back to full strength because, it's been a little bit compromised. I was probably at 50 to 75% in there, figured out a way to like make the Olympic trials. But, then I was there. I'm like, well, I want to do better than I did. So right now we're just kind of figuring some things out of like what is best. Like September is the goal. What's the best opportunity for me to be feeling really good going into that weekend in September and, try and make a world team.
What does your nutrition look like?
Routine. I do the same things when I'm like I wake up in the morning. I eat like yogurt, peanut butter, honey, granola before practice. Go practice. Depends where my weight is. Like if my weight's good, I'll have like eggs, bacon, avocado. If it's not great, I'll have like a smoothie for lunch. Then I'll work out again at like 2, 3. And then for dinner, I'll either make chicken, salmon, steak with like a side of rice and veggies and mix it up. And I just eat around the same times every day.
You're like a dog.
Yeah, I literally am like clockwork. That's why like when my coach will like change practice time, it like will throw me off so much. I'm like, no.
Like,
I need to practice. We're practicing at 10 today, right? Not 11, not 12.
Yeah,
I need to eat here. Like I'm like clockwork.
Are we fucking up your schedule today? What is your? Do you have to eat?
Oh no, I'm good. I'm good right now. I'm on my like I'm just starting to get back into it.
I don't want to throw anything off.
Oh no, I had a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese on the way.
Oh, you're chilling, dude. I was about to say we have to get some pizza or something.
It was great.
Damn, Mons, what do you want for this? Maybe some sushi. Mons like omakase, but he
Love
keeps
omakase.
fishing me to get some.
I like
omakase.
sushi too. Sushi's like
Bro,
when I'm
about to
training.
Open up your mind. I'm telling you, this place is good.
Sushi's like a good cheat meal when I'm training.
Yeah,
like I
dude.
love it. Like because it doesn't make like it's like you just have like.
The thing
6
is that the
I just
downside
eat
is
so
that you're
much
hungry
sushi.
like 15 minutes later.
You shit your pants and then you're hungry again. So I'm like, all right, well, what the fuck was that for?
Yeah, and then I eat
$100 down
again,
the drain,
so-
and then I eat again.
It's so expensive though, and they don't give you a lot.
Dude, I
It's
was
messed
at
up.
I was at a omakase in the city the other day. $400 a person. We
Wait,
didn't pay.
$400 a person. Wait, there's an
head.
omakase in Philly too. It's like it's like that. It's ridiculous.
They have
Have
a
you
ton
had
of
it?
them.
I'm not spending $400 for them
dude,
to give me a piece of sashimi.
We were with like some. It's insane, dude. Like some whiskey brand like sponsored or whatever, but it was the coolest. It was like 10 people around the table.
Is it all you? I hope you get full, right?
You know what?
It's
That's
like
one of the-
16
that was one of the
it's like
first-
16 pieces usually or 17.
I walked away. I was like,
So
I'm
you're
good.
giving me how
Yeah.
much? I'm
gonna hear it till I
leaving
die.
here like till I can't walk.
The difference
Yeah.
is though, like the rice. The rice is the big difference in omakase.
Yeah.
It's like that nice warm, and they use like the real nice
If
vinegar.
you go to good places, like it's no long. They all have.
Everybody has good
fresh
fish. Exactly.
fish,
Yeah, it's
right?
not about the fish.
If you're paying that much too, it's a known place, reputable place. It comes down to like what the concoctions that they can make, the sauces and the rice.
Yeah.
That's what kind of sets them apart. But I've been to a few great places. But there have been places that like were couple $100 ahead, and then you just get completely let down. And then you get pissed off.
like, what the fuck
Like
is
one
this?
thing for sure is like when I'm going out to eat, I don't care about spending the money. If I'm having a good time, everyone's happy. It's good food.
me too. That's
But as
hard.
soon as like the food's shit, that's when I'm actually fucking pissed off. You know what I
100%.
mean? Now I'm starting to get pissed off. I'm never gonna come back. I'm a little dramatic about it.
I can
'cause
tell.
spent that much. You know what I mean? It's like I want to have a good time. At least give me good service. Like
Yeah.
your service sucked and your food sucked. Like fuck that.
You're a savant. Though.
You're getting
You
a
know
Yelp
food.
review right away.
Yeah,
I
no
love. I write pretty good Yelp reviews.
You're a Yelper.
You're a Yelper.
If I won't write a bad review, but
You
if a
write a good
place
one.
blows me away, I'll
Yeah.
go on and
100%.
write like, man, this was so good. Like
Really?
there's this pizza place in Philly, and you know how we are being North Jersey. It's like, man, this Italian food down here stinks. But Philly, actually, their Italian food's really good. But they have like a sweeter sauce. It's like my mom's sauce is that North Jersey rich, like Italian, like. I had this pizza. It was called Paulie G's down there, and they put this. You ever have this hot honey stuff they put on?
Oh, yeah.
Bro, it blew me away. I went on. I wrote them a review like, "Yo, like this hot honey stuff like changed my life." Like I had pepperoni pizza. The pizza was good, but then this hot
honey
honey
on top of the pepperoni.
Oh my god! I was just like, yeah. After every tournament, I just order, and they come in huge slices too. I just
Paulie
order a
G's in Philly?
It's phenomenal.
Paulie G's in Philly.
And you got to
Shout
get
out.
the upside down grandma slice hot honey. So it's this sesame seed like Sicilian crust with like tomato. It's like a tomato pie with pepperoni, hot honey.
Dude, I've had a
It'll
sesame
literally
crust.
blow your
It's
mind.
So good. There's a place down the shore
It'll blow your mind.
that has a sesame crust. Oh man.
When you say upside down, they put the cheese first and then the sauce. That's what makes it.
Maybe, or maybe it's just I don't know.
Yeah. It's usually.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the sauce. Yeah,
I
so
like
the
more
cheese.
sauce. Like for my
Yeah.
pizzas, I like this. I want to taste your sauce.
Yeah.
I want to compare it to like what we're doing over here. I always like a little bit more sauce.
Yeah, and it has to be really red too. It can't be that watered down stuff.
Exactly.
We got some options for you then, if that's what you're looking for. A Street? No. Or Apulia? Oh, Sally Slices is down in, but that's not close to him. He's like, I think he's like by Manalapan though. No, Jackson. He's in Jackson. Sally, where you at? Look, Sally, I'm about to call him. That dude, you would love Sally. Sally's a fucking beast of a man. First of all, I was like 6'5". He comes in, sits in these little ass chairs. Like, oh, he's like from his parents are from there. He makes what's called a Corleone pizza. It's like real thick. But the sauce, you like the pepperoni, honey.
I like.
I do too,
I like
and that's why he
thin
came here.
crispy.
So just try it, and I was like, oof.
Nice
so if you
crisp.
like the Neapolitan style, like thin crust.
Yeah,
dude. We got some places.
I hate when we go to
Where
Chicago
is
for
it?
wrestling. They just
Yeah.
Right outside
crap
Trent.
pizza.
Yeah. We'll find it. Well, as we wrap up, I want to know intrinsics of your wrestling. What is your go-to takedown, and what's your go-to pin?
Ooh. Go-to takedown is probably a single leg, sweep single leg, like near arm, far leg. Don't want to give away any of my secrets how I get there.
Yeah, right.
And then my go-to pin, it's hard. Like in college, like I could like, it's just hard to pin people.
Yeah.
You know, like it's really, especially in freestyle, it's really hard to pin people because at least in folk style wrestling, like collegiate wrestling, like you can like get on top. Like you have time to like, if you take them down to like work a half Nelson or an arm bar or whatever, like, but for freestyle wrestling, like you take the guy down and they lay flat. It's
like
called
10
parterre.
seconds.
And it's only like 10 seconds. So you typically try and lock up like a gut wrench or a leg lace and try and turn them 8 times or 4 times for 2 points. And then a 10-0 is a tech. So unless you like kind of fall into a pin, like let's say you take a shot and he like reacts weird and you like can like put him to his back.
You're saying freestyle.
In freestyle, but like folk style, you could get pinned. Like you could ride legs, throw a power half and pin. But in freestyle, if you can't turn the guy, they blow you back up after like 10 seconds. So
Okay. What do you like better, freestyle or folk style?
I like freestyle
You
better.
do?
I do.
Really?
More
Yeah.
exciting. You're on your feet.
More exciting. But I will say I miss the one thing I do miss is like I don't miss the college grind of the wrestling season, but I miss like being in that environment, that dual meet environment, like when Virginia Tech would wrestle NC State or Penn State or Ohio State. I mean, there's like freaking, 7,000-8,000 people there just screaming either against you or for you. And it was just such a cool environment to wrestle in. And so like that was fun. Like now it's like we typically just go to tournaments. There's not as many people. Like it's just, and then wrestling has tried for so long to just try and like make it more like the UFC, but like, it's the UFC, like people like they want to see like violence essentially. It's like you got 2 grown men trying to literally like that Max Holloway and Gaethje was
crazy.
I got goosebumps just watching that. It was insane.
Man, I watched it over and over again.
I was like
that
watching it
a
on
holy
loop.
fuck moment. Like every time I watch it, it's just I'm showing everybody. It just gives me chills.
I had money on Gaethje, and
Respect
I
to
was like,
both.
I may win my money right
Because
now. He's dead.
What's crazy about the UFC is they basically put on what the wrestling, what the NCAA championships, right, is one weekend a year for the NCAA championship for wrestling. UFC does that every single weekend.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, and
They're
nowadays,
selling out
now
arenas
especially.
because like tickets for the NCAAs, like they go probably for like UFC prices, right? Like it's that NCAA's coming to Philly next year. You might have to come down. Right. You have to. Have you ever been to NCAA champ?
Oh
You
my
have,
God,
bro.
no.
It is.
I was at the Madison Square Garden one. It was fucking awesome.
It is
All right, I'm in.
insane.
We have to get some Polo G's pizza.
Yeah.
I think the
Yes.
difference in folk style, freestyle, folk style seems a little easier to follow. Like the gut wrenching rolls, I'm like, why did he just score fucking 4 points to do a little roll with this dude? It doesn't mean. And I was talking to my buddy Tom Bishke, he wrestled you guys when you were younger, and he's like, you just don't get it. Like, da, da, da. I was like, yeah, I don't get it, and it just doesn't. Like the objective of a wrestling match, right? Going back to the Greek times when this was like the oldest sport in the world, was to show dominance against another man without having to throw a punch, right? If I pin you to the ground, you cannot move. I beat you. I'm better than you. But the fact that you rolled me over, why does that prove that I'm better than you? And that's what my problem with freestyle is as a spectator is like, that doesn't seem like a dominant position or a move to me. But he was explaining like, if you could gator roll a motherfucker 4 times in a row, like you own that guy. You know? And I was like, all right, fair enough.
But
was
like
kinda cool.
that's what you see with like folk style wrestling, right? It's like you're like, right, this dude's struggling to get out from bottom. This dude's job is to hold him down. Like, it's different where like my wife, like I met her when I moved to Philly. So she only knows freestyle wrestling. I'll take her to a Penn or Drexel match. And I'll be like, yeah, trying to explain the rules. She's like, this dude just rolled across his back, like hit a Grammy roll. Like, why isn't that 2 points? Like, she literally,
That's interesting.
Well, we watched the NCAA championships together this year, and I'm like, she's like, I have no idea what's going on. People are just rolling around like under each other's legs. She's like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So for her, freestyle's more easy to follow. But for the average person, like, you know, because right, there's so much like
I'm just used to the
popularity
other sport,
around college wrestling that it's like most people don't grow up and just start freestyle. Like, we're the only country that does folk style, but that's what you get in. Like, a lot of people don't wrestle freestyle though a little bit later on.
Well, right? I'm surprised you're able to transition. Like, how hard is the transition from free or to folk, from folk to free?
I think wrestling's wrestling. Like, for instance, like Jason Nolf, I don't ever remember him wrestling freestyle like throughout college or even like high school. He wrestled a little as he got older, right? And he's one of the best in the world at free. Like, wrestling's wrestling. Like, people are gonna figure it out. It's like, yeah, right. Like, just like wrestlers going into MMA. Like, we're like eventually, like, I don't know how to throw a punch. I don't know jiu-jitsu, but like I'm sure like if I like commit and I don't want to go in the MMA after I'm done, but I'm sure if I was
Answer my question.
I'm sure if I was very like hungry to be like, I want to be the best UFC fighter in the world, like I would be like a sponge. I would absorb all this information because you're right. Like, as wrestlers, we know where our hips are. We know, hey, like this doesn't feel good. Like, when me and Sean were rolling a little bit, like, meanwhile that dude could probably tap me out. I couldn't last in an actual fight. I don't know if I could last a minute against him, and I would probably run around the cage or just try and take him down.
Have you trained jiu-jitsu before?
No, I know how to do it. Like, that's the only thing. So this is what was so funny. I'd be training with him, and I'd just like try and like if I took him down, I would just try and jump on his back and just try. Like, this is the only thing. I don't know how to do an arm bar, right, anything like that. So it was funny where that's so crazy. But the one thing I was able to do is like when he would go for something, I knew like this feels like he's kind of working strong on base. Something. Yeah. Like, maybe I should try and slip my arm out of here or get out of this. So I was okay like defending stuff like jiu-jitsu. I just don't know how to like do any of the moves correctly. You would beat the piss out of, I would say, like most white to even like purple belts. But then when you ran into somebody that knew you were a wrestler and then just like let you play, because think about it, your game ends when his starts, right? Like, you pinned him. They like being on there, right? And then there's gonna be positions where you're like, just I'm not gonna fall for the bait. Right. You'll get guillotined, I would say, 10 times in a round. You're like, this is terrible. Well, because I like, and that was the thing, is like when I would like take, I think it's called guard when one guy's on you, right? Like, that's called guard. Like, I knew like when they would start throwing their legs over and trying to get my arm, like I could like be aware of like, okay, like I kind of think from like watching it, I kind of know what you're doing, but like in like an actual match, like I don't really like, I would try and take you down and just try and probably, but it would probably work, you know what I mean? Like you said, wrestling is wrestling, grappling is grappling. Like, you have, think about how much mat time you have against the guy that has his blue belt because he's been trained for 6 months on a jiu-jitsu mat. Like, you would maul him so bad that he would be like afraid because he never felt that kind of pressure. Like, Monzo's a too. Mon trains once a year and goes into culture and beats dudes' asses because he just has that mentality. I think it's more of like, you understand the pressure of the game. Yeah, the problem is too, and I actually started I remember my dad, because he's been training jiu-jitsu for over 30 years. But he said, you know, I don't want you to develop any bad habits. So on my time off from Duke in the summers, I would go to Marcelo Garcia's, 5-time world champ, best there is. Yeah. That's right up in the city, right? Right in Chelsea. But I think there comes a point where, you know, you get a couple-time world champ or an ADCC champ, like, these things don't really matter as much. You could have the best base in the world. I can maul him until we get to the ground. But there's some things that you just can't change. And, you know, if you want to be the best as a wrestler, I think that, you know, you got to start opening up. And with that, you're going to get submitted. You know what I mean? There's going to come to a point where you need to get to the next level for jiu-jitsu if you're transitioning out of wrestling, and you got to start opening everything up. It is, but I think that's the best base to learn from. It's like a 100%. Wrestling background. You're going to learn things, and you're going to pick in terms of toughness. Yeah, dude. I mean, look at a Bo Nickel. You know what I mean? Like, his wrestling. He also had a funky wrestling style. Yeah. He I want to say he grappled with who's like the best jiu-jitsu guy. Gordon Ryan. He like did like a match with him and like held his own for like 20 minutes. That was he actually.
I don't want to speak on camera about this, but he said it'd be a little bit different if he rolled now with Gordon now. But
I'm sure.
yeah,
because think about it. He's put 2
he didn't train
years
at
in.
all. Like he said he hopped on like a jiu-jitsu mat like a couple times prior to that, and I think now I was watching his documentary. I think he trains like jiu-jitsu once a week, but even that is more MMA jiu-jitsu, not just regular grappling. So it's a completely different sport. Well, what's his name? Gordon went against Pat Downey. They did you got to give those guys credit. Like Gordon went a wrestling match against Pat, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
I think Pat like teched him,
Killed him,
and then Gordon subbed him in.
Was it even a sub though? I thought
No,
he was
Gordon's like,
tapping
why are you
just 'cause of
tapping?
pressure.
Gordon's like, why are you tapping? This isn't a choke. And Pat, he had him in like it looked like a half Nelson, but I think he was like neck cranking him a little bit.
he just had like
And Pat was like this, and Gordon's like, I'm not choking you, stop tapping. It was pretty nuts.
his
And that's a
pressure,
dude that's no joke. You know what I mean?
it's just the pressure's different. That's what was crazy. Like when Sean would like grab like my neck or whatever, and just like he'd be like, I got you. Like he could tap me out in a split second. Like it's not like you get this and you can fight it for 3 or 5 seconds. Like as soon as he gets it, like you're like, I can't.
But
I can't get out of it.
That's experience based too. Like you may not, just like wrestling, you may think you're tired, you're really not. You may think you're getting choked, and it does take times where, and I've been on a mat, it feels like you're drowning out of water.
Oh yeah.
And then you take a step back, your fight or flight mode kind of kicks back out. You're like, all right, am I dying? No, I'm talking, I'm breathing. Okay, am I panicking because I feel claustrophobic? Yes, but I can fight through this because I'm not actually choking. I'm not going to run out of breath.
Yep.
And then you learn, okay, this is actually going to pass me out, and this isn't. But it's little stuff like that you would tap preemptively, inevitably. You know what I mean? Like you just don't know what that feeling is supposed to feel like.
I would have to learn. Like if I wanted to like go and maybe right 4 years when I'm done, right?
You'd be a savage.
I'm
You'd
like,
be
man,
nuts.
like I want to learn jiu-jitsu because like if I put my all into something, like I'm gonna be good at it.
Oh, hell
right.
yeah.
So right now it's like I have no plans to be an MMA fighter. That's probably more off the table. Well, I roll jiu-jitsu. I don't want to get hit in the face is ultimately what I know. I don't want to I don't want someone trying to kick me in my head. But like jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, what if you tap or they get your arm in a weird angle, like you tap. That's like, and maybe like after I'm done, like the problem is I'm just so competitive, right? So it's not like, oh man, if I go in like, I don't know, 2-3 times a week and I start like losing the guys that like have no business
wanna go
beating
right
me,
back.
I'm like, all right, like I'm gonna be like, it's gonna take
why you'd be
over
so
my,
good.
it's gonna take over my life. But that's what's crazy. Like jiu-jitsu now, there's so much like, someone's like dumping so much money in there. All of a sudden, like the popularity and like people like are actually making like a lot of money by grappling now. Not even like MMA, like UFC, like just actual grappling.
I think Gordon kind of cemented that.
You
with
got to
the
give credit to
ADCC.
guy. Yeah. 100%.
Bruce Buffer, you know what I mean, announcing for the ADCCs. Like
He
they had
he announced for grappling.
for ADCCs
Yeah.
last year. So
The ADCCs are
with
legit,
that, it's
dude.
just it gives you the chills. I think a lot of people are starting to enter. You know, and now everybody's doing it.
Well, even the old era, like, so you have like the Marcellos and the Gracies, but like even when Dylan was training and competing against like the Gary Tonins in the world, like they were just entertaining guys to watch. So you wanted to see what happened next because, you know, Dylan would win a match and talk his shit and then call somebody else out and beat him again. Like these are things that people want to see. Gordon Ryan, he will write like a little note of how he's going to submit a guy, put it in a box, open the box after the match, and it's like the exact movie hit. So like you want to talk about dominance, it's like he calls
He's
his
like
shots.
playing with his food.
Playing with his food with guys that are literal world champions. Like that's the difference. And I think the sport, like UFC or like the UFC, is just entertaining to watch. You want to watch people submit, which on the streets they'd be dead.
Like I just saw Nolf is on a card, a grappling card.
Is he?
Just announced that.
Yeah, with someone. I don't know the guy's name.
I don't know him
Like,
either.
but I think he's pretty like good in the
jiu-jitsu-
grappling.
jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
match?
it's a grappling one.
How is he even gonna? Does he train?
I'm sure he does, but he's always with Bo, so
Yeah.
I'm sure
I'm
he's
sure he
training
knows-
a
I'm sure he
lot.
knows what he's doing. That'll
They have
be
a top
crazy.
team out of Penn State, so
Yeah.
I think they have some guys that they can.
And
roll
like
with.
Nolf again has a really funky style.
Yeah.
Like so like he'll train like guys like that. Like I have a funky wrestling style. So like if I like but like for like Bo, right? Like he knew like his plan was like I'm gonna give it one shot at the Olympic trials, right? He lost to David in 2021. And like I'm like if he continued to wrestle, like he probably would have made a world team or an Olympic team, right? Like he was that good. But it's like, no, like I'm giving it one shot. You know, I'm going down this MMA route, and right, like now he's killing it, man. Like he's one of the only people probably that has like made the amount of money, and I don't know what he makes, but just in sponsors alone, like he's probably one of like the fastest growing. Like most people, it takes even like a McGregor, it took like 2-3 years to write. This dude, he's got so much buzz, so much popularity, and he's good that they've just almost like gave him a flash pass to the not a flash pass. He earned it, right? He fought in the Ultimate Fighter, but like he's one of the most popular wrestlers of all time. But now he's also branching into the UFC, and he signed with Jocko Fuel, I think. Right? Who knows what that contract is? All these other things, right? He lives in Penn State. It's dirt cheap to live there. He built a top team. Like, it's like this dude, like, these guys, like, he's a businessman too at the same time. Like, he's 5 fights in. Most people, when they're 5 fights in, are still amateur. This dude's 5 fights in. He's probably making more than a lot of the guys in the top 10.
Well, like when you said flash pass, I think exactly they're not giving him easy fights, but they're giving him fights that they know are good step ladders, right? Because you give him a guy like Hamzat day one, of course he's not going to fare as well as he would if he fought him 2 years on the road. And Bo knows that sort of stuff. It's not about, is he a tougher guy than me? It's like he's seasoned more, and I have to work my way in to a contender fight or a championship fight like that.
And Dana probably also knows that Bo, if they treat him right, and they give him
they're going
to build him
100%.
Up because he's going to make them so much money.
They want him to be a champ for sure. You could see it in the fights that they're giving him, and he deserves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see Bo lose unless you're a real deal hater.
That's where, like, for me, like, MMA is one of the reasons, like, I thought about fighting after college, but it's like I at least, like, now, like, I get a paycheck every month, right, to wrestle at the RTC. Yeah, I get it. So I have like a roof over my head, a paycheck every month, where fighting, it's a huge risk. Right? A lot of these fighters, you could be it's almost like playing like AAA baseball.
Yeah.
Or you're making, and even, I guess AAA, right? Like you're at least still making something. I'm sure some of these fighters have little endorsement deals, this and that, but you're kind of skating by until you get that contract to go to the major leagues.
It's tough,
right?
dude.
And then even then, like you're not still putting yourself in a position until you really get into the top 10. So it's a lot of like betting on yourself, but it's like, it's, I guess, right, high risk, high reward.
It's just because it comes with so much more than just being a really good fighter. Like the guy, we have a culture fighter down here, Munch, is 8-0, an absolute ADCC. I don't know if he might not have won trials, but very competitive. So like his jiu-jitsu is,
he's a world champ too.
Some of the best you'll see. And he'll go out, I think in his last 8 fights, he has 5 submissions by rear naked choke. So he is just a submission grappler through and through.
That's what I would have.
Right, but he's a savage.
He's 8-0
But the
now.
problem is,
Shout out
like,
Munch.
he's 8-0. Shout him out. He finally should be getting a call from the UFC, but it's taken him that long because he doesn't have that wow factor of knock people out in 10 seconds. And that's what UFC is looking for. Or he's not grabbing the mic and being like, fuck you, this and that.
Yeah.
I'm the best. Because that's just, he's a very confident guy. He's a great dude, but he's not an asshole. And sometimes they need that, like, so super
That persona.
Yeah, like that almost
Kobe.
air to him. Yeah, exactly.
I met Kobe. He
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
nicest guy in the world. I met him at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, and I remember I was sitting next
Kobe
to
Bryant?
No, Kobe.
I was like, hold on.
Kobe
wait.
Covington.
Are you sure, buddy?
Man, I got up and he was the nicest guy in the world. But when he's on the mic, man, he talks so much shit.
Yeah.
It's funny to see. But
puts it on, bro.
he had to come to a point where he had to do that in order to stay in the UFC.
Yep.
Otherwise, they were going to let him go.
Yeah. He knew he had to make that decision. And I think you see these fighters, they put on a show for the mic and it doesn't align with who they are. And it's like, dude,
How much
that's not
pressure?
you.
You put
How much pressure you got to do now? Yeah, have
so
on you.
much nonsense on yourself. Like, this is not who you really are, but you're trying to be somebody else. And like, it's only inevitable it's inevitable for it to be stuck in your head leading up to the match. Like, this is not really me and I'm being somebody else. How much does that play a factor in the whole lead up to the actual fight?
100%. And I'm sure they deal with that and they hopefully they don't let that get in the way.
Yeah.
So, well, Dave, we wrap up every podcast by asking the guest 2 questions. In your life, doesn't have to be wrestling related. What has been the lowest of your lows, and follow that up with what has been the highest of your highs?
Lowest of my lows and highest of my highs. I think I already know the highest of my highs. That's a no-brainer. But I'll start with the low. You always want to end on a high note, right?
Exactly.
So I guess probably lowest of lows. I mean, I guess I've dealt with some deaths and stuff, right? Like, I don't really want to get into that, but those were definitely low points in my life at those times. But I think probably in terms of low, I would say, I don't know if low is the right word to describe them, but probably the most difficult kind of challenges I've faced, probably 2 would be committing to college and then leaving college after. And I won't talk too long about it, but I'll dive in a little bit of, I think I was 17 years old and I was making my first real life decision, right? I was in between a few colleges. My mom obviously wanted me to stay close. And, at the last second, I kind of decided like, hey, I want to go do what's best for me. And I wanted to kind of experience something outside of New Jersey, right? And Virginia Tech had a top 5 program. So I was like, they came on late in the recruiting process. And I vividly remember I was 17. I might have even been 16 at this point when I committed. And I had the phone in my hand for 2 hours. And I had to call one of the coaches that I was down to 3 schools. One kind of fell off at the end. And I was down to 2 schools. And I'd known I was going to Virginia Tech. And the other school, I was 17 years old, and my dad was, love my dad. But he's tough, right? He's like, you're going to be a man soon. You have to make this decision, right? A lot of dads nowadays will call the college coach. My son's not going here. My dad's like, you're going to do that. This is your choice. I remember sitting on the porch 3 hours, 2 hours. Like my dad's like, we got to go to practice here soon. It was like from after school from like 3 to like 6. I was sitting on the porch. I'm just like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. Like and the phone's in my hand. Like I have the number about to be dialed. I ended up telling the coach, like, who was really good to me, and I trained with him a bunch, that I wasn't going to attend. And at 17 years old, it was just like that pit in your stomach. Right? And then probably my other most difficult thing was probably leaving Virginia Tech. In terms of difficulty of just being at a place that I called home for the last 5 years of my life, I thought I was going to stay there. I wanted to stay there. And it just didn't work out. Like some of my best friend was staying there, so I wanted to like be with him. And I was comfortable too, right? Like I was cozy, and like we talked about, like there's no growth with comfortability, right? So it was really hard to like look the coaches, and my like Coach Roby especially, who was my head coach, or he was assistant coach, then became my head coach my sophomore year at college. To look him and just be like, hey, like I'm leaving. I'm going on the something different, right? Or not something different. I'm going to continue wrestling, but I'm just not going to do it here, But I was ready for a change, which ended up being my high moment, making the best decision. It was a hard decision, right? To leave my friends, leave my Virginia Tech family. Super difficult decision, but ended up becoming a high point in my life, moving to Philly, right? Meeting my wife. I would say that was, that's been the of all the medals and stuff I've won. And, I think, meeting her is at this point the highest point until we have kids. I'm sure that'll, we love our cats. We have 2 cats, but, meeting her and just kind of like growing together in faith, and just just seeing our inner lives starting to be intertwined. And, it wasn't in my life plan to get married at 25. At all, right? It was not in my bingo card. But I knew, and when I moved to Philly, right, I had been going through this process on my own. It was the first time I was really like single in my life. Like I was always a relationship guy, but I would go in like 6 months at a time, right? Go 6 month relationship, I'd create my own toxic relationships. But I always like to have someone. And so I moved to Philly, and I was single, but I wasn't acting like old single Dave, right? I was like, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to refine myself, right? I'm like, growing in my faith here. It's almost like this refinery period that God used me for, of like, because had I had met my wife when I did, and I wasn't like the man that I was, like there's no way in the world like she would have liked me, or I would have just overlooked her. So it was like right place, right time kind of thing. And it was, yeah, that is just like, even like talking about her and just talking about like how we met. It was like after a week, I was just like, man, I know I'm in trouble here. Like this is something different. Like I'm like, right. And then the devil comes in and starts telling you, like, is it too good to be true? Like this and that. And I'm just like, right, all this conflicting. So I'm like, there's something so much different about this woman than the other girls I've dated or girls I've met. And then as time went on, it was just like, man, this is it, and I had known, like, right. I didn't know I wanted to get married until I'm like, man, well, this is probably what the rest of my life's going to look like, because it was just, she was so awesome. And it was funny when I asked, like, I proposed after like, I don't know, 6-8 months of dating, somewhere in that. And I told her dad, because I was thinking of like, all right, we wanted to, wait to move in together. And, and then I was thinking about like, I want to start, like, I know I'm going to marry this girl. So when I asked her dad for a blessing, I was like, I know it's soon, but I'm like, I want to wait to move in with your daughter until we're like at least engaged, right? Like to like show this commitment to you. And I was like, but I'm like, I'm going to marry her. So it's like either going to be now, it's going to be next year, it's going to be 2 years. But like, I want to start building like our like future, like family, like in terms of like financially, right? She's paying whatever she's paying for rent. I'm paying whatever. It's like, look, like I'm going to marry this girl. Like we want to start building this like empire together, but
right.
You need, like, for me, like to have a teammate like that, like she's so supportive in what I do, I'm supportive in what she does, and you create this like bond in this team that you end up having forever.
That's awesome, man. What was her name?
Julia,
you have to wait 2 hours to hear that, but I promise it's worth it. Stay to the end, because that was great, man, and hopefully that's inspirational for everyone else out there. Mike, go ahead, you can follow that up. What is your lowest of lows, highest of highs? Doesn't have to be anything crazy,
Yeah. Lowest of lows. I think there've been a lot, but I think that a big one that was a turning point for me was my first year of college. Didn't do well at school. Had the pressure of being on my own, and really finding out who I was. Because to be honest, I think I was completely lost once I did go to college, and I felt like everybody else had they knew everything about themselves, and that really wasn't the truth. As you get older, like that's not the truth. Everybody is in the same position, but at the time I felt like I was alone. And so that's actually, fun fact, that's actually how I started writing music and making music, because I was just upset and I wanted to live this other life that I used to be living when I was back home. And so I would write lyrics pretending that I was still there. And so I would say that was the worst part of my time, and really, leading up to stepping away from wrestling, having to be a man and having those hard conversations with my parents, and telling them, because my dad, he didn't want me to, he didn't want me to step away. You know what I mean? He knew what I was capable of, and I respected that. But at the time, I was like, F everybody. I'm doing something for myself for once. But it was very hard to detach. I think a high for me was probably, getting into JP Morgan. I think there was a time where I had experienced, like, my last employer. I was a small private equity firm. Something about the culture there was off. I had a great career there, but I have the fiduciary responsibility for my clients when I was raising the capital for the firm, to be completely transparent. And I'm a good reader of people, and so when I was in the office, I felt like some crazy things were happening, some shady stuff. And so I asked them to see like a model of, hey, you're promising these returns for our clients. How let me see the model behind that. Let me see the proof. So they were being around the bush, and I felt like they weren't being transparent. And I was like, F this, I'm out. I left. A couple months later, they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So I was right. But the downside was I jumped out with no plan B, because I didn't want to be in there any longer. Right. And so that period, I wanted to go into investment banking. I was studying my ass off inside 12 hours a day to prepare for these interviews, to compete with people that were laid off at the time from Goldman Sachs, that were already investment bankers, and in a market where nobody was hiring. And so like, it was very easy to jump on my phone or look at the people around me and see that, hey, everybody seems to have everything figured out, and I'm back, ground zero again, having to rebuild. And so I did that for like 6 months, 7 months. Working with my dad, helping him run, his business. But I knew that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to challenge myself. I could have took the easier route and probably took over his business, but that wasn't the cards for me. I didn't feel like, that's something that I had to do. I had to, get this investment banking role or somewhere on Wall Street to take a step forward. Didn't get the IB role eventually, but I never thought I would have gotten into JP Morgan, number one bank, on Wall Street in the country. I thought I was going to be somewhere else. But it's funny because going back to all of our points that we made is, a lot of the times, like, we jump into something and we don't know how it's going to play out at all. And we're questioning, like, is this the right decision that we should be making? Like, should we spend more time on this, or should I just jump into a different role? Right. And then it's not until we actually get it finally that we look back and say, holy shit, I was doing all the right things. I just had to give it time. You know what I mean? So I think that was a high for me.
And that's recent.
That was about a year and 3 months ago. So I think there's a lot of there's a lot of downs in my life, and there continuously will be. But I'm prepared for them, and I feel like I'm mentally strong enough to get through whatever life throws at me. I know that there's going to be another high, so I'm ready for whatever.
That's it, man. I don't know if people are afraid to like admit. Everybody that I ask has mentioned, and you guys can attest to this. Like everybody that has said they're high, it's been a recent thing. Like maybe I'm catching people at the great time. I don't know, but it seems like everybody is peaking, and that's a beautiful thing for me to get to experience with people. So, Mike, Dave, thanks for coming. That's it for today. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.